There are nights when the mind will not rest. You may lie in bed, the lights off, the world quiet, yet inside your chest there is a restlessness, 1,000 small voices tugging at you, replaying memories, planning tomorrow, worrying over things you cannot control. It is in these moments, when the world outside has finally stilled, but the storm within still rages, that you begin to wonder what happiness truly means. Not the fleeting kind that comes from getting what you want, not the shallow thrill of applause, but the kind of peace that allows the heart to rest. If you are listening tonight, perhaps you too have felt that longing for something deeper, for a calm horizon within your own being, where the waves of thought and worry can finally settle. Before we begin this journey together, I invite you, gently, without pressure, to do something small for me. If these words already resonate with you, if they touch something in your heart, consider giving a like to this video, or even subscribing to the channel. But please, only if it feels right, only if it feels like an offering you make with ease. And perhaps, if you wish, you could share in the comments your time and country, so that we may see how many hearts are gathered together tonight across oceans and continents, breathing under the same stars. This too is a kind of happiness, the knowledge that we are not alone. And now, let us return to that question: what is happiness? In the teachings of the Buddha, happiness is not described as a prize to be won, nor as a possession to be guarded, but as the natural state of a mind unburdened by clinging. Imagine a sky that is perfectly clear, without a single cloud to obstruct the light. The sun is always shining, but when clouds gather, it becomes hidden, and we believe it has disappeared. The same is true of happiness. It is not something we must chase after, as though it were lost in a distant land. It is already here, but obscured by the clouds of craving, fear, anger, and restless thought. When these clouds pass, the horizon of the heart opens wide, and the natural warmth of joy shines forth. Yet the world we live in rarely teaches us this. From a young age, we are told to seek more wealth, more recognition, more achievement, more possessions. We are encouraged to measure our worth by what we have accumulated, as though happiness were built from bricks of ambition. But if you have ever carried too many stones in a backpack, you know that more does not always mean better. It means heavier. And many of us are walking through life with bags so heavy that we have forgotten what it feels like to move lightly. The Buddha once taught that unnecessary suffering is like carrying a hot coal in your hand, believing it will bring warmth, when in truth it only burns. Happiness, then, is not about adding, but about releasing. It is not about building walls of possessions, but about opening windows of space. This is why the Dharma speaks so often of letting go, not letting go as a form of loss, but letting go as a form of freedom. Imagine a bird that has been carrying twigs and branches in its beak, endlessly searching for the perfect nest. One day, it sets them all down, and only then does it realize it can finally take flight. That moment of release is the beginning of true happiness. But here is the paradox: we do not need to fight against our emotions or exile them from our hearts in order to be happy. Sadness will come. Anger will arise. Fear will visit. These are part of being human. And to resist them only gives them greater power. Happiness is not the absence of difficult emotions, but the ability to sit with them without being carried away. It is like sitting by a river, watching the current flow. Thoughts, worries, and feelings drift past like leaves upon the water. You do not need to grasp them, nor do you need to push them away. You simply watch, and in this, watching you remain free. There is a beautiful teaching in the Zen tradition. To study the self is to forget the self. What does this mean? It means that when we observe our own thoughts and emotions with awareness, we discover that we are not bound by them. We are not the anger. We are not the sadness. We are not even the restless thoughts that circle endlessly. We are the awareness that sees them all. The vast sky in which clouds appear and dissolve. When you remember this, even in the quiet darkness of your room, you begin to taste the freedom of happiness, a happiness that does not depend on circumstances, but blooms from within. Think for a moment about your own life. How many times have you told yourself, "I will be happy when. I will be happy when I earn more money. I will be happy when I find the right partner. I will be happy when I move to a better home. When I achieve more recognition. When I solve all my problems." Yet notice how, even when some of these conditions were met, the mind soon found new conditions, new desire, new obstacles. This is the cycle of craving. It is endless. Because the mind that seeks happiness in conditions will always demand more. The Buddha compared this to drinking salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. True happiness arises when we step out of this cycle, even for a moment, when we rest the mind in the present, when we breathe deeply and simply notice the miracle of being alive. We discover a peace that does not depend on having or achieving. It is the peace of enough air in your lungs, enough stillness in your heart, enough awareness to feel this moment as it truly is. Happiness, in its most essential form, is contentment. As we continue this journey together, allow yourself to soften into this truth. You do not need to chase happiness, because happiness is not running away from you. It is here, in the gentle rise and fall of your breath, in the quiet presence of your body lying at rest, in the awareness that is listening to these words. Let your mind open like a window to the night sky, vast and boundless, free of weight, free of demand. For in this spaciousness, the horizon of peace becomes clear. Happiness, as taught in the Dharma, is not about building a castle of desires, nor chasing endlessly after fleeting pleasures. It is far more subtle, more intimate, like the stillness of a pond when the wind has ceased. True happiness is the quieting of inner conflict, the softening of those invisible quarrels that happen not between people, but within one's own heart. You may have noticed how often the mind argues with itself, one part insisting you should have done better, another defending your choices, yet another worrying about what others think. These voices clash like cymbals in the silence of your being, and the result is exhaustion. To know happiness is to know the release of this inner struggle, The Buddha once described the nature of the untrained mind as a monkey leaping from branch to branch. Never satisfied, always agitated. When we sit in stillness, when we breathe deeply and anchor awareness in the present, the quarrels slowly dissolve, like ripples spreading out on water until the pond reflects the sky clearly again. In that clarity, happiness arises naturally, without effort. It is not a happiness dependent on external gifts, but one that grows from the simple absence of internal noise. Yet, happiness is often misunderstood. Many imagine it as a perpetual state of bliss, a radiant smile unbroken by sorrow. But the Dharma teaches something much more real. Happiness does not mean the absence of all pain. It means the absence of needless resistance. Consider how a musician tunes a stringed instrument. If the string is too tight, it breaks. If too loose, it cannot sing. But when it is tuned just right, harmony flows effortlessly. The same is true of the heart. When it is pulled too hard by desire, or left slack by neglect, suffering arises. But when it rests in balance, not clinging, not rejecting, happiness flows naturally. What is the source of this balance? It is the understanding of emptiness, or shunyata. Emptiness does not mean nothingness. It means spaciousness, the open sky of the heart where no fixed identity, no rigid clinging, can take root. Imagine standing on a mountain peak, the horizon stretching in every direction. In that vastness, the small quarrels of daily life feel like whispers lost in the wind. Emptiness is not a void to fear, but a space of freedom, where the mind no longer clutches at every passing thought. In this space, even difficulties can be carried lightly, for they are seen as passing clouds, not permanent walls. The quarrels within often spring from attachment to identity. I am this. I am not that. I must be seen a certain way. I must achieve certain things. I must prove myself. But the Dharma asks us gently, who is this I you defend so fiercely? Where is it? If you look closely, you will find thoughts, emotions, memories, sensations, but none of them stays. None of them is the solid self you imagine. To cling to them is to wrestle endlessly with shadows. To release them is to discover the lightness of freedom. Consider a small story from the Zen tradition. A monk once asked his teacher, "What is the way to peace?" The teacher pointed to the bamboo swaying in the wind and said, "See how it bends. It does not resist the breeze, nor does it cling to stillness. It moves as it must, and returns to its center. That is peace." Happiness is like this, not the rigid denial of life's winds, but the flexible surrender to their passing. When the quarrels within you soften, when you stop demanding that every thought or feeling obey your will, the heart becomes like bamboo, bending without breaking. This quiet happiness cannot be purchased, cannot be earned through comparison, and cannot be stolen away by others. It lives in the pause between breaths, in the space before reaction, in the silence that comes when you no longer need to argue with yourself. It is the happiness of acceptance, the happiness of being as you are in this moment, without needing to become anything more. Imagine for a moment that you are walking along a riverbank at dawn. The world is still hushed. The air, cool against your skin. The mist rising from the water. You hear the faint sound of flowing water. Unhurried, unforced. There is no struggle here. Nukwaho, no demand. The river does not argue with the rocks. It flows around them. It does not complain when the path is blocked. It finds another way. In this simple act of flowing, it fulfills its nature. And in watching it, your own heart remembers how to flow. This is the essence of happiness, not conquering obstacles with force, but moving around them with grace. The Dharma reminds us that quarreling with others often reflects quarreling within ourselves. If we carry anger inside, we will find anger outside. If we carry fear, we will find something to fear in every corner. But when the heart rests in clarity, when we release inner conflict, the world outside reflects peace back to us. The mind and the world are not separate. They mirror each other, like two moons reflected in a still pond. If the water is troubled, the reflection is broken. If the water is calm, the reflection is whole. So, to cultivate happiness, begin not by chasing after what lies beyond your reach, but by turning inward and asking, where am I quarreling with myself? Where do I demand perfection? Where do I scold myself with harsh words? Where do I refuse to forgive? These are the knots that tighten the heart. To untie them is to free the flow of happiness that was already there. Take a deep breath now. Feel the air entering, cool and gentle, and leaving, warm and soft. With each breath, imagine the quarrels of the mind loosening, as though tangled threads are being gently unwound. With each breath, the heart grows lighter, the horizon wider, the sky clearer. Happiness is not a place to reach. It is the clear pond within, always waiting for you to remember. The world often whispers to us that the way to happiness is through more possessions, more recognition, more accomplishments, more experiences, to fill the endless scroll of our days. From childhood, we are taught that success is measured by accumulation, that worth is confirmed by what we can display. And so, we walk with heavy hearts, carrying dreams like stones in a pack upon our shoulders. Some stones are labeled wealth, others status, others approval, and still others future security. Each one feels necessary, yet together they weigh us down, and we wonder why our steps are slow, why our breath is shallow, why the horizon never seems to come closer. The Buddha taught that there are two kinds of suffering: the suffering that life naturally brings, and the suffering we create for ourselves. The first is unavoidable. The body grows old. Illness comes. Loved ones pass away. And change forever alters the landscapes of our lives. This is the suffering that belongs to the human condition, woven into the fabric of impermanence. But the second kind of suffering, the suffering we add through clinging, comparison, greed, or resistance, is like carrying an unnecessary burden. It is like holding a burning coal in our palm and then blaming the world for our pain. Consider for a moment how often this second kind of suffering shapes your life. Perhaps you have felt envy when another prospers, though your own needs are met. Perhaps you have replayed words spoken long ago, carrying them as though they were fresh wounds. Perhaps you have told yourself, "I will not be complete until I achieve this or acquire that." In each of these moments, you add a stone to your pack. It is not life that asks you to carry it. It is the restless mind, always reaching outward instead of resting inward. The Dharma offers us a gentle alternative to set down what is unnecessary, to walk lightly. Imagine a traveler who, upon reaching a crossroads, removes their pack and discovers it was filled not with treasures but with stones. What relief floods their body when they let it fall to the earth. This is what letting go feels like. It is not deprivation, but freedom. To live simply is not to live poorly. It is to live without dragging the excess that blinds us to the beauty already before us. Yet our culture celebrates the opposite. Advertisements entice us with promises. If you buy this, you will be admired. If you achieve that, you will finally be enough. And so, we build obstacle courses for ourselves, believing that happiness lies just beyond the next hurdle. But the Buddha's wisdom is clear. The more we chase, the farther away contentment drifts. Desire is like fire. The more fuel you feed it, the hungrier it becomes. If you have ever tried to quench thirst with salt water, you know how cruel such satisfaction is. The taste excites the tongue, but the body only grows drier. True happiness does not come from accumulation, but from release. Imagine standing in a quiet garden at dawn. You notice the dew glistening on each blade of grass, the sound of a bird greeting the light, the fragrance of the earth itself breathing with the morning air. In this moment, nothing is missing. The wealth of the entire world is present in a single breath. But if your mind is restless, if it is calculating what is absent, if it is measuring what you lack, then even in the most beautiful garden you will see only weeds. This is why the Buddha taught contentment as a treasure greater than gold. Contentment is not the dull resignation of giving up. It is the luminous recognition that what you already have is enough. Let us reflect more deeply on this. Suppose you hold a glass of water. If you focus only on how much is missing, you feel poor. If you focus on the gift that is present, you feel rich. The glass has not changed. Only the perception has. Happiness is not the filling of the glass to the brim, but the shift in awareness that sees the water as precious. In this way, we can understand why accumulation fails us. It conditions the mind to always measure what is absent, to never rest in what is here. This teaching is not a denial of life's responsibilities. We must care for our families, tend to our work, and meet our needs. But it is an invitation to see the difference between what is truly necessary and what is excess. A warm meal, a safe place to rest, companionship, and health. These are enough for the flowering of joy. Beyond that, the hunger for more often distracts us from the miracle of the present. Perhaps you have noticed how children play. Give them a stick, and it becomes a sword, a wand, or a tool for drawing pictures in the earth. Give them a box, and it becomes a castle, a gave, or a boat sailing to imaginary lands. Their joy does not arise from the richness of the object, but from the richness of their imagination. This is the teaching of simplicity. Happiness is not in the object itself, but in the way the mind meets it. So let us imagine together, what would your life feel like if you set down even one of the stones you carry? If you released the need for constant approval, or the demand to always be perfect, or the endless race toward more feel, even in your imagination, how light your steps could become. This lightness is not fantasy, it is the path of the Dharma. Each act of letting go clears the horizon a little more, until the sky of the heart is open and free. As you breathe now, sense the pack on your shoulders. What stone have you been carrying that no longer serves you? Perhaps it is resentment, perhaps comparison, perhaps fear. With the next exhale, imagine setting it down upon the earth. Do you feel how the body sighs in relief? Do you feel how the heart expands in spaciousness? This is the freedom that comes not from gaining, but from releasing. And in this freedom, happiness is no longer something you must chase. It is what naturally appears when the burden is gone. In every life, there are moments of pleasure and moments of deeper contentment. And though they may seem similar, they arise from very different roots. The Buddha distinguished between these two with great clarity. One is the fleeting happiness that comes from sense pleasures, the sweetness of taste, the thrill of achievement, the delight of praise. This is called kama tanha, the craving for sensory delight. Like firewood thrown into a flame, it burns brightly for a moment but quickly fades, leaving behind smoke and ash, and always demanding more fuel. The other is the more profound joy called sukha, the well-being that arises not from what the senses grasp, but from the calm of the heart aligned with wisdom, compassion, and the Eightfold Path. The first kind of happiness, the joy of pleasure, is not to be condemned. It is natural to smile at the taste of ripe fruit, to enjoy the warmth of the sun on the skin, or to delight in the laughter of loved ones. But if we mistake this for the foundation of our lives, if we clutch at it as though it were permanent, we quickly fall into suffering. For pleasure, by its very nature, is unstable. The fruit is eaten, the sun sets, the laughter fades. When we demand that such things last forever, we set ourselves against the truth of impermanence, and our hearts grow restless. The second kind of happiness is deeper, quieter, less dramatic. It is the peace of knowing one has acted with kindness. It is the steady warmth of a mind free from greed and hatred. It is the subtle radiance that arises when you live in harmony with your own values, even if no one is watching, even if no one applauds. This is the joy of sukha. And, unlike pleasure, it does not depend on circumstances. It is born from the soil of wisdom and watered by compassion. When cultivated, it becomes a garden that flowers even in times of drought. Think for a moment of someone who has devoted years to caring for an ill parent, or raising a child through sleepless nights, or tending to a community in times of hardship. To the outside observer, such a life may look heavy with sacrifice. Yet often those who live it speak of a deep fulfillment. Their happiness is not in escaping difficulty, but in knowing they are aligned with something greater than themselves. This is the Dharma's teaching. True well-being often comes wrapped in challenge, for it demands patience, selflessness, and resilience. In our modern world, this distinction is easily blurred. We are constantly encouraged to chase the quick spark of pleasure, mistaking it for lasting peace. Social media, advertisements, and cultural stories feed the illusion that joy comes from what is new, shiny, and immediately gratifying. But just as eating only sweets leaves the body weak, living only for pleasure leaves the heart unsatisfied. It is the deeper nourishment of meaningful action, of compassion, of mindfulness that sustains us. Let us imagine for a moment that you are standing at the edge of a forest. To your left is a path lined with fruit trees heavy with ripe offerings. The first bite brings delight, but soon the sweetness fades, and you must reach for another, and another still. To your right is a quieter path, shaded and calm. It offers fewer immediate thrills, but as you walk it, you notice wildflowers blooming, streams flowing, birds calling. This path leads deeper into the forest, where peace awaits. The first path is pleasure, the second is well-being. Which one will you choose to walk more often? The Buddha spoke of the middle way, a path not of denying all pleasure, nor of drowning in it, but of walking wisely between the two, to appreciate the gifts of the senses without clinging to them, to engage in the world without being enslaved by it. This is the art of balance. You may enjoy a sweet fruit, but you do not demand that it never decay. You may sever music, but you do not despair when silence returns. You may cherish praise, but you do not collapse when criticism arrives. This is freedom, not the denial of pleasure, but the release of attachment to it. Happiness, then, is not the endless pursuit of thrills, but the cultivation of harmony. Harmony within yourself, harmony with others, harmony with the natural flow of life. The Eightfold Path offers guidance: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. Each step is like a string on the instrument of life. When tuned with care, the melody that arises is one of enduring peace. You may ask yourself, how can I begin to taste this deeper happiness? The answer is simple yet profound. Begin by pausing. Pause before reaching for what you crave. Pause before reacting to what you dislike. In that pause, you discover space, and in that space, you find freedom. Freedom from compulsion. Freedom from being dragged endlessly by desire. It is in these small pauses that the seeds of sukha are planted. With mindfulness, they grow. Reflect on your own life now. Can you recall a moment when you acted with kindness, even when it was difficult? Perhaps you comforted someone in pain, offered forgiveness instead of resentment, or gave generously without expecting reward. Remember how the heart felt afterward, not excited, not restless, but quietly at ease, like a lake unshaken by wind. That is sukha. That is the deeper happiness the Dharma points to. So tonight, as you rest and breathe, let the restless chase of pleasure ease. You do not need to reject it, nor to cling to it. Simply recognize it for what it is, a passing spark, and let it go. Turn instead toward the still flame of inner well-being, a flame that does not waver with the winds of change. It is there, within you, waiting only for the quiet of awareness to reveal it. There are forms of happiness that do not glitter, that do not shout their presence, and yet they hold a depth that outshines all fleeting pleasures. These are the joys that arise from devotion, from care, from love that asks nothing in return. They are often woven into tasks that seem heavy, even burdensome. Yet within them lies the fragrance of profound meaning. Consider the parent who rises again and again through the night to soothe a crying child. The body is weary. The eyes ache with lack of rest. Yet, in the heart, there is a glow, a quiet, knowing that these sacrifices are acts of love. Or think of the daughter who tends to her aging father, helping him walk when his legs falter, listening with patience when his memories repeat. The days may be long, the work demanding, but within that care blooms a fulfillment that cannot be purchased or traded. These forms of happiness are not loud, not dazzling, but they sustain the soul like deep waters that quench the roots of a tree. The Dharma honors this kind of joy. In the path of the Bodhisattva, happiness is found not in self-centered gain, but in the vow to ease the suffering of others, to give, to serve, to hold another through difficulty. This is to touch the heart of compassion. And compassion is the soil where lasting happiness grows. When you act for the benefit of another, the sense of separation between self and other begins to dissolve. You see more clearly that life is interwoven, that your own well-being cannot be torn apart from the well-being of those around you. In this recognition, a peace arises that no pleasure of the senses can match. Think also of those who dedicate themselves to mastering a skill, the artist shaping clay, the musician practicing scales, the healer studying years to ease another's pain. The hours are long, the progress slow, yet within the discipline is a quiet joy, the joy of aligning effort with purpose. Even the storms of difficulty become part of the journey, for they strengthen patience and deepen resilience. We often imagine happiness as light and easy, but the Dharma teaches us to look more deeply. True happiness is not afraid of difficulty. It embraces challenge as part of the path. Just as a lotus rises from the mud to bloom pure and fragrant, so too does fulfillment arise from the mud of effort, sacrifice, and endurance. Without mud, there is no lotus. Without difficulty, there is no growth into true compassion and wisdom. Modern voices sometimes suggest that happiness lies in comfort, in removing all obstacles and resting in ease. Yet if we reflect honestly, we see that some of the most meaningful moments of our lives have come during times of struggle. The long nights of caring for a loved one, the hard years of building something worthwhile, the perseverance through trials that seemed unbearable at the time. These are often the experiences we look back on with deepest gratitude, not because they were easy, but because they revealed strength, love, and meaning we did not know we possessed. The Bodhisattva path reminds us of this truth. Happiness is found not in avoiding the storms, but in learning to walk through them with compassion as our lantern. A story tells of a monk who came upon a village struck by famine. Instead of fleeing to find food for himself, he remained with the people, sharing what little he had, offering prayers and comfort. When asked why he stayed, he replied, If I cannot remove their suffering, at least I can share in it. In that sharing, he discovered a joy deeper than self-preservation. His happiness was not in safety, but in solidarity. And so we must ask ourselves, what kind of happiness do we truly seek? The quick spark of pleasure that fades as soon as it is grasped, or the enduring warmth of a heart that beats in rhythm with compassion? The first is fragile, vulnerable to every change of circumstance. The second is resilient, a flame that continues to burn even in the winds of hardship. This is why the Dharma does not promise a life without suffering. Instead, it offers a way to transform suffering into wisdom, to use challenge as a teacher, to allow compassion to blossom in the soil of difficulty. In this transformation lies a happiness that no storm can sweep away. As you breathe now, reflect on a moment in your own life when you gave of yourself not for gain, not for recognition, but simply because your heart was moved. Perhaps it was a small gesture, a word of comfort, a helping hand, a quiet prayer. Remember the feeling in your chest when you acted, that warmth, that expansion, that soft glow. That was happiness. It may not have felt like excitement, but it was steadier, more nourishing. That is the happiness the Dharma points us toward. Let us imagine together. You are walking through a dense forest. The air is heavy, the path unclear, and you carry a lantern in your hand. The wind blows. The rain begins to fall, and you stumble often. Yet in your other hand, you hold a child who cannot walk alone. Every step you take is slower, harder, but also more purposeful, because you walk not only for yourself, but for another. The darkness does not overwhelm you. The lantern may be small, but it is enough to guide you both. In this image lies the truth of compassionate happiness. It is born not of ease, but of shared journey. So tonight, as you rest, let go of the idea that happiness must always be light, effortless, or filled with constant joy. Let your heart open to the possibility that true happiness may also be found in the weight you carry for others, in the patience you show through trials, in the love that asks for nothing but the chance to give. This is not the happiness of chasing, but the happiness of living deeply. In the teachings of the Dharma, the middle path is always emphasized, for it is here that balance is found. The world, however, often urges us toward extremes. On one side, we are tempted to chase pleasure without pause, to fill every empty moment with stimulation, with noise, with new delights that promise joy but dissolve quickly. On the other side, we may be tempted to reject life entirely, to withdraw into denial, thinking that avoiding all desire will protect us from pain. Yet both paths miss the truth. The first leaves us restless and unfulfilled. The second leaves us cold and disconnected. The Buddha's wisdom is that happiness blooms in the gentle middle ground, where pleasure is not clung to and pain is not resisted, but both are embraced with awareness. This teaching is echoed even in the modern sciences. Researchers have found that those who devote their lives only to immediate pleasures often report a hollow emptiness, while those who engage in meaningful work, service, and purpose tend to feel a deeper satisfaction. It is as though the ancient words of the Dharma have been confirmed by new eyes. The happiness that lasts is not the flash of indulgence, but the steady glow of meaning. But meaning does not come without cost. To live with purpose often requires sacrifice, patience, and resilience. A parent devotes years to raising a child. A healer spends countless hours tending to those who suffer. A seeker walks the path of meditation through long nights of silence. Each act demands effort and, sometimes, discomfort. Yet, through this effort, arises a happiness that is strong, steady, and free from dependence on fleeting pleasures. It is important to see clearly that pleasure itself is not wrong. The laughter of friends, the sweetness of fruit, the comfort of warm sunlight, these are natural and beautiful. What the Dharma warns against is not the experience of joy, but the clinging to it, the desperate grasping that insists, "This must last forever." Pleasure without clinging can be enjoyed fully. Like a bird singing at dawn, you hear its melody. You smile, and when it flies away, you let it go without sorrow. But when we cling, when we demand that the bird remain, we suffer not because it sang, but because we could not release it. The middle way teaches us to live in harmony with life's ebb and flow. Imagine standing on a shoreline. Waves arrive, some gentle, some fierce, and each one eventually returns to the sea. If you fight against the waves, you exhaust yourself. If you run from them, you miss the beauty of their dance. But if you stand with awareness, allowing each wave to touch your feet and pass, you experience the ocean's rhythm without being drowned. Life's pleasures and pains are like these waves. To walk the middle way is to let them come and go without grasping, without fleeing. There is a parable told of a monk who lived a simple life in the mountains. One day, a villager came and offered him a bowl of fresh fruit. The monk accepted it with gratitude, savoring its sweetness. The next day, another villager came and accidentally insulted him with harsh words. The monk listened calmly and bowed before returning to his hut. When asked how he remained so peaceful, the monk replied, "Pleasure came, and I did not cling. Pain came, and I did not resist. In both, I remained free." This is the lesson of the middle way. Freedom is not found in controlling what happens, but in releasing the mind's compulsion to cling or reject. In our own lives, the challenge is often subtle. We may not notice how quickly the mind latches onto pleasure or recoils from pain. A compliment comes, and we replay it, craving more. A criticism arrives, and we carry it for days, feeling its sting, long after it was spoken. The middle way invites us to notice this grasping and to breathe into it. With mindfulness, we see the craving arise. We acknowledge it, and we let it dissolve like mist in the morning sun. With mindfulness, we feel the sting of pain. We allow it to be, and we let it pass like a passing cloud. In this practice, balance becomes possible. Happiness, then, is not about eliminating all difficulty or indulging in all pleasure. It is about walking gently between the two, holding each experience with awareness, and not losing oneself in either. Just as a bird flies with two wings, so too does life require the balance of joy and sorrow, ease and effort. To cling to only one wing is to fall. To embrace both is to soar. As you breathe now, reflect on your own path. Where have you leaned too far toward indulgence, seeking to fill the emptiness with more and more? Where have you leaned too far toward denial, cutting yourself off from life's natural joys? Both are forms of imbalance. With your next breath, imagine yourself stepping into the middle, a place of calm, where pleasure is tasted without attachment, and pain is faced without fear. This is the middle ground of freedom, and in it happiness arises like a spring flowing from the earth, cool and clear. In the silence of this moment, notice how your own body rests. The breath enters and leaves. The heart beats steadily. The mind may wander, but with each return to awareness, it finds its center again. This is the practice of the middle way, returning again and again to balance. And in this balance, happiness is no longer something distant. It is here, in the rhythm of your breath, in the stillness between thoughts, in the gentle clarity of the present moment. When we speak of happiness, it is tempting to imagine it as a single note, a fixed sound that, once discovered, will play endlessly within us. But the Dharma shows us that happiness is not a single note, it is an entire harmony. Just as an orchestra requires many instruments playing together in balance, happiness too arises when many conditions come into alignment. It is not born from one cause alone, but from a web of causes and conditions woven together in subtle interdependence. This truth is called pratitya samutpada, dependent origination. Nothing arises in isolation. Everything that blooms does so because countless elements have come together at the right time, in the right way. Think of a flower in the garden. To blossom, it requires soil, water, sunlight, air, and the hands that planted it. None of these alone creates the flower, but together they allow its petals to unfold. In the same way, happiness is not created by wealth alone, or by success, or by comfort, but by the interweaving of health, purpose, compassion, relationships, mindfulness, and acceptance. When these conditions harmonize, the heart opens naturally, like a flower responding to the morning sun. Yet how often we forget this. We search for a single source of happiness, as though one achievement, one possession, one relationship could complete us forever. But no single note can play an entire symphony. No single drop can fill an ocean. The Dharma invites us to see happiness more truthfully, as a harmony of conditions, each one fragile, each one impermanent, and yet together forming moments of deep peace. Consider your own life. There may have been a time when you achieved something you longed for, perhaps a recognition, a goal, or a possession. For a while, it brought joy. But soon you noticed that joy was incomplete. Why? Because the other instruments of life were silent. Perhaps your health was struggling, or your relationships were strained, or your inner peace was unsettled. Without harmony, the single note could not sustain you. This is the nature of dependent origination. Happiness is not one string plucked endlessly, but a melody that arises when the whole is balanced. This is why the Dharma does not give us a single formula for happiness. Instead, it points us to awareness, to mindfulness, to compassion. Because these qualities help us nurture balance, they help us see which conditions need tending and which can be released. Mindfulness is like the conductor of the orchestra guiding the instruments so that none overwhelms the others. Compassion is like the gentle rhythm that keeps the whole ensemble steady. Without mindfulness and compassion, the music of happiness becomes discordant. With them, harmony returns. Let us imagine together you are sitting by a river, listening to the sounds of nature, the rustling leaves, the birds in the distance, the water flowing over stones. Each sound alone is simple, but together they form a symphony of serenity. Happiness is like this. It is not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it is quiet, a gentle harmony woven of many threads. If you listen closely, you will hear it. If you breathe deeply, you will feel it. The teaching of dependent origination also reminds us of impermanence. Just as an orchestra's performance eventually ends, so too do the conditions of happiness shift and change. Health may falter. Relationships may transform. Circumstances may alter. To cling to any one condition is to invite sorrow, for none can remain fixed. But to appreciate the music while it plays, without demanding it last forever, is to live with wisdom. When one song ends, another begins. When one condition passes, another arises. Happiness is not a single possession to keep, but a continual unfolding of harmony as life flows. In this way, we can see that suffering too arises from conditions. Anger arises when the seeds of resentment are watered. Fear arises when uncertainty is met with resistance. Just as happiness requires harmony, suffering requires discord. If we can see the conditions that give rise to suffering, we can gently alter them. This is the path of transformation, not destroying the orchestra, but retuning the instruments, adjusting the rhythm, allowing new melodies to emerge. The Buddha compared this to tending a garden. If you wish for flowers, you do not curse the weeds. You simply cultivate the soil, water the seeds, and give sunlight. Slowly, the flowers bloom and the weeds retreat. Happiness arises in the same way. By tending to compassion, mindfulness, and wisdom, we create the conditions for peace. By letting go of greed, hatred, and delusion, we reduce the conditions for suffering. Life is a garden of causes and conditions, and every moment of awareness is a gardener's hand. So tonight, as you breathe and rest, consider the orchestra of your own life. Which instruments are playing too loudly? Perhaps desire drowns out contentment. Perhaps fear overshadows trust. Which instruments are too quiet? Perhaps gratitude waits to be expressed, or kindness to be offered. With mindfulness, you can listen, adjust, and bring harmony. Happiness does not demand perfection. It only asks for balance. Take a deep breath now and feel your body as part of this symphony. The air entering your lungs, the steady rhythm of your heartbeat, the silence holding you, all of it is music. Nothing is missing. Nothing is separate. You are not a solitary note, but part of the great harmony of existence, rising and falling, coming and going, in endless interconnection. When you recognize this truth, happiness ceases to be a distant goal. It becomes the simple awareness that everything you need for peace is already here, woven together in this very moment. The orchestra of life plays continuously, and when you listen with awareness, the music is always beautiful. Happiness wears many faces, and the Dharma teaches us to recognize them with mindfulness. Sometimes happiness arrives as excitement, a sudden brightness that makes the heart beat faster, the kind of joy that feels like sunlight breaking through clouds. At other times, it is quieter, like the steady glow of an oil lamp, giving warmth without calling attention to itself. And then there are moments when happiness is tender, flowing through human connection, through touch, through the kindness of being seen and held. The world of science describes these different qualities as chemicals within the body: dopamine sparking excitement, serotonin bringing calm, oxytocin nurturing bonds. Yet long before science gave them names, the Buddha had already pointed to their impermanence. Each has its place, each has its beauty, but none can last forever. Excitement fades, calm changes with circumstance, connection shifts with time. If we cling to any of these forms of joy, we suffer when they pass. If we honor them without clinging, we can appreciate them as they are gifts of the moment, not possessions of eternity. The Dharma points us toward another kind of joy, one that does not depend on such fleeting conditions. This is the joy of mindfulness itself, the joy of being fully present, awake and aware. Imagine walking through a forest path. One day you rush, thinking only of the destination, and the forest feels ordinary, almost invisible. Another day you walk slowly, breathing with each step, and suddenly the world is alive. The fragrance of pine, the sound of birds, the colors of moss upon stone. The forest has not changed, only your awareness has. And in that awareness, a subtle joy arises, not the excitement of something new, but the gentle contentment of seeing clearly. This is why mindfulness is often described as a wellspring of happiness. It reveals the richness already present in ordinary life. Drinking a cup of tea, you taste not just liquid, but warmth, patience, and the labor of countless beings, the rain that nourished the leaves, the hands that harvested them, the earth that gave them life. To drink with awareness is to taste the interconnection of all things. How can one not smile in such recognition? The joy of mindfulness is not dramatic. It will not sweep you into ecstasy or make your heart race wildly, but it is steady, reliable, and deep. It does not depend on what comes or goes. It is simply the joy of being here, awake, breathing, alive. This kind of joy can accompany you through both light and shadow, because it is not tied to conditions but to awareness itself. Consider how often we overlook this. We chase after excitement, thinking, joy, must always be intense. We wait for perfect circumstances before allowing ourselves to be at peace. But mindfulness teaches us that we need not wait. Joy can be found even in the smallest acts, the sound of rain against a window, the stillness of night, the rhythm of your own breathing. The Buddha once said, "There is no path to happiness. Happiness is the path." Mindful step. Each mindful breath is already a step into joy. Let us imagine you are sitting in your room, perhaps alone, perhaps weary. The day has been long, filled with demands and noise. Now you close your eyes. You feel the air entering your nostrils, cool and fresh. You feel it leaving, warm and soft. You place your hand upon your chest and feel the steady rhythm of your heart. In this moment, nothing is missing. There is no need for more. This quiet contentment is a form of happiness, subtle but profound. It may not dazzle the senses, but it nourishes the soul. In Buddhist teachings, this subtle joy is sometimes compared to a gentle stream. The river of excitement may roar, the waves of passion may crash, but the gentle stream flows steadily, nourishing everything along its path. Those who learn to rest in this stream discover a happiness that is not shaken by life's storms. For even when the world is turbulent, the stream of awareness flows within, offering peace. This is not to deny the beauty of worldly joys, to laugh with friends, to feel love, to marvel at beauty. These are precious gifts of being human. But the Dharma reminds us to meet them as travelers passing through, welcome them warmly, enjoy their company, and then bow as they leave. Do not chain them to your heart, for they are not meant to stay. The happiness of mindfulness, however, is like the ground beneath your feet, always present, always available, needing only your awareness to recognize it. As you listen now, breathe into this truth. You do not need to chase happiness in its many forms. You can rest in the joy of awareness itself. Notice the sensations in your body, the stillness in the room, the sound of these words. Each is a doorway into the present, and each doorway opens into peace. This is the joy that endures, the happiness that does not depend on what is gained or lost. And so, as the night deepens, let yourself soften into this stream. Let excitement come and go. Let calm arise and fade. Let connection warm you and transform. Through it all, let mindfulness remain, steady as the earth, vast as the sky. For in mindfulness, the truest happiness is found not as a passing visitor, but as the very ground of your being. Each being carries within them a unique path toward happiness, a path shaped by their own karma, their memories, their habits, and the countless conditions that have led them to this very moment. What brings one person joy may leave another untouched. What soothes one heart may stir restlessness in another. In this sense, happiness is deeply personal, for no two lives share the same constellation of causes and conditions. Just as no two leaves on a tree are identical, the way each person experiences peace is distinct. And yet, even within this diversity, the Dharma teaches that there are universal truths. While the surface forms of joy may differ, the roots are shared. A heart rooted in compassion, a mind cultivated in wisdom, and a life aligned with ethical conduct. These are foundations of well-being that remain steady across all beings, across all cultures, across all times, like the roots of a great tree. Unseen but essential, they nourish the visible blossoms of happiness that appear differently for each person. Consider the way karma works. Our past actions, words, and thoughts shape the tendencies of the mind, planting seeds that eventually ripen into experiences. One who has cultivated generosity will naturally feel joy when giving. One who has practiced patience will find peace in the midst of difficulty. One who has fed anger and greed will discover that these seeds bear fruit in suffering. Each person's happiness is therefore colored by the seeds they have nurtured. This is why the Buddha emphasized mindful action. Every choice waters a seed, and every seed will one day grow. And yet, the Dharma is also profoundly compassionate. It reminds us that we are never trapped by the past. Though our seeds may be different, though our karma may shape us, we can choose in each moment which seeds to water. If we have sown anger, we can begin to sow kindness. If we have lived in greed, we can begin to practice generosity. In this way, happiness is both unique to each being and guided by universal principles. No matter who you are, no matter where you are, the path to well-being is always open through compassion, wisdom, and mindful living. Let us reflect on the universal conditions of happiness. The Dharma speaks of the 5 precepts to refrain from harming, from stealing, from false speech, from intoxicants that cloud the mind, and from sexual misconduct. These are not rules to restrict us, but gentle guidelines to protect our happiness. A mind that harms others cannot rest in peace. A heart that deceives is never fully free. To live ethically is to live without the weight of regret, and this lightness becomes the ground of joy. Beyond ethics, there is the cultivation of compassion. To open the heart to others, to recognize their suffering as your own, is to dissolve the illusion of separation. Happiness built on selfishness is fragile. Happiness built on connection is enduring. When you give freely, when you offer kindness without expecting return, you discover that joy multiplies, not diminishes. This is a universal truth. The more compassion is practiced, the more happiness flows. And then there is wisdom. Wisdom is not merely knowledge, but the deep seeing of reality as it truly is, impermanent, interconnected, without fixed self. To see impermanence clearly is to release clinging, for you understand that nothing can be held forever. To see interconnection is to soften into compassion, for you know that your well-being and the well-being of others are inseparable. To see the illusion of self is to find freedom, for you no longer fight to defend what was never solid to begin with. Wisdom clears the fog of delusion, and in that clarity, happiness shines. We might say, then, that happiness is like a jewel refracting light. The shape of the jewel differs for each person, carved by their karma and conditions. But the light itself, compassion, wisdom, ethical living, is the same. It is the universal radiance of the Dharma shining through countless unique forms. Imagine a vast field of flowers. Each blooms in its own color, its own shape, its own fragrance, yet all draw nourishment from the same sun, the same rain, the same earth. Happiness is like this. Each being experiences it differently, but the source is shared. To recognize this is to honor both the uniqueness of your path and the universality of the truths that guide all paths. So, let us pause and reflect. What seeds of happiness have you watered today? Did you offer a kind word? Even if small, did you act with honesty, even when no one was watching? Did you breathe mindfully, even for a moment, instead of rushing? Each act, each thought, each breath is a seed. Some will flower quickly, others slowly, but all contribute to the landscape of your life. The Dharma does not ask us to compare our garden with another's. Some flowers bloom early, some late. Some fields are filled with wild colors, others with quiet greens. What matters is not comparison, but care. Happiness is not found by asking, "Why is my garden not like theirs?" but by kneeling down to tend the soil of your own heart with patience and love. As you breathe now, bring to mind the universal truths that nourish all gardens: compassion, wisdom, and ethical living. These are not distant ideals. They are seeds you can plant now, in this very moment. A gentle smile to yourself, a breath of gratitude, a silent wish for another's well-being. These are small seeds, but they carry the power of transformation. Over time, they blossom into a happiness that is both uniquely yours and universally shared. So tonight, as you rest, honor both truths: that your happiness is personal, shaped by your unique journey, and that it is also connected to timeless principles that unite us all. In this way, you can walk your path with confidence, knowing that though it is your own, it is also supported by the same sun, the same rain, the same earth that nourishes every being. When we look closely at the conditions that allow happiness to blossom, we begin to see patterns that echo across all human lives. Though each person walks a path shaped by their own karma, the Dharma shows us that there are certain pillars of well-being that remain constant, like the sturdy beams of a temple. Without them, the roof of happiness cannot hold. With them, life becomes a dwelling of peace. The first of these pillars is health, the simple, often overlooked gift of a body that allows us to breathe, to walk, to touch, to rest. The Buddha taught that good health is one of the greatest blessings, for when the body suffers deeply, the mind struggles to find balance. Yet even here, the Dharma offers compassion. Health is never perfect, and illness is a part of life. What matters is not the absence of illness, but the cultivation of care to nourish the body with mindful eating, with rest, with gentle movement, is already a form of happiness. To accept the body's changes without hatred, to care for it as one cares for a fragile flower, is itself a path of peace. The second pillar is purpose. A life without purpose drifts like a boat without a rudder, easily carried away by every wave of desire. But when we align ourselves with a direction, with values greater than personal gain, life gathers meaning. This purpose need not be grand, it need not be praised by the world. It may be as simple as nurturing a family, serving a community, creating something with patience, or walking the path of practice with sincerity. Purpose gives shape to our days and strength to our hearts, reminding us that our lives matter not only for ourselves, but for the whole web of existence. The third pillar is relationship. Human beings are not separate islands. We are like trees in a forest, each with our own trunk and branches. Yet our roots are interwoven beneath the soil. To live cut off from others is to wither. To live connected is to thrive. Happiness grows in the soil of trust, kindness, and love. When we offer ourselves honestly and listen deeply to another, bonds are formed that nourish both sides. The Buddha spoke often of Sangha, the community of practice, reminding us that no one walks the path alone. Companionship, friendship, and intimacy are not luxuries. They are vital conditions for a joyful life. The fourth pillar is stability in the basic needs of life. While wealth itself does not guarantee happiness, the absence of security, hunger, homelessness, overwhelming debt creates great suffering. This is why the Dharma teaches generosity and right livelihood, to share resources so that no one is left without, and to earn our living in ways that do not harm others. A stable foundation of life allows the heart to relax, to turn inward, to cultivate mindfulness and compassion. Without it, the mind is consumed by survival, and deeper peace remains distant. And the final pillar is connection to something greater than the self. For even if we are healthy, purposeful, supported, and secure, the heart longs for transcendence. The Dharma answers this longing with the recognition of interbeing. When we see that we are not isolated, that our life is woven with all beings, we touch the sacred. Some may feel this in nature, others in service, others in meditation. However, it is touched. It is this connection to the vastness of life that lifts happiness from personal satisfaction into spiritual freedom. These pillars are not separate from the Buddha's path. In truth, they echo the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. The Noble Truths begin with the recognition of suffering, the absence of health, purpose, connection, stability, and transcendence. They continue with the understanding of its causes: craving, ignorance, and clinging. They offer the possibility of cessation, the blossoming of well-being, when these roots are released. And they provide the path, the Eightfold Way of right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. In this sense, the Eightfold Path is not abstract philosophy, but a practical architecture of happiness. Right view helps us see life as it is, rather than as we wish it to be, dissolving the quarrels of illusion. Right intention plants seeds of compassion, aligning purpose with love. Right speech and right action nurture relationships with honesty and kindness. Right livelihood ensures stability without harm. Right effort keeps the heart steady, not too tense, not too slack. Right mindfulness anchors us in awareness, opening us to joy in each breath. Right concentration gathers the mind, allowing us to taste the deep stillness beyond desire. When these 8 steps are practiced, The pillars of happiness naturally strengthen. Health is cared for. Purpose is found. Relationships are nourished. Stability is supported. And transcendence is touched. Happiness, then, is not a mysterious prize, but the natural fruit of walking the path. Let us imagine together. You stand in a temple open to the sky. Around you are 8 great pillars, holding up the roof. Each one represents a practice, a truth, a condition of happiness. As you walk among them, you feel their strength. The temple does not collapse because each pillar supports the others. In the same way, your life does not falter when these conditions are cared for in balance. You may face storms, but the roof holds. You may face change, but the foundation stands. Reflect now on your own life. Which pillar feels strong? Perhaps your relationships are deep, or your sense of purpose steady. And which pillar needs tending? Perhaps your health has been neglected, or your mindfulness left behind. The Dharma does not ask you to perfect them all at once. It asks only that you notice, with gentle awareness, and take one step toward balance. Over time, the temple of your life becomes a sanctuary of peace. As you breathe, imagine each pillar glowing softly within you. Health, purpose, relationship, stability, transcendence, all supported by the eightfold path, all rooted in compassion and wisdom. In this vision, you see that happiness is not fragile, not fleeting. It is steady, like a temple standing firm upon the earth, offering shelter no matter the weather. So often, we are drawn to promises of happiness that arrive in the form of formulas, books, teachers, advertisements, and voices in our culture tell us, do this, and you will be happy. Follow this one path, and you will be fulfilled. These messages are tempting, for the heart longs for certainty, for a clear map that guarantees peace. Yet, if you look closely, you will see that such formulas almost always fail. Why? Because life is not one straight road, but a living river. Each being flows differently. Each path wins according to the terrain of karma, circumstance, and choice. To offer a single formula for happiness is like giving one prescription for every illness. It may soothe some, but it cannot heal all. The Dharma teaches us that while there are universal truths, the way they are embodied is unique to each person. Just as countless seeds blossom into different flowers under the same sun, each being must discover their own way of living compassion, wisdom, and mindfulness. The sun is the same. The soil is the same. The rain is the same. Yet the rose, the lotus, and the wild daisy bloom in their own forms. To expect one flower to look like another is to miss its beauty. In the same way, to expect one path to resemble another is to overlook the uniqueness of each soul. There is a parable often told in the Dharma. Several blind men were asked to describe an elephant. One touched its leg and said, "It is like a pillar." Another touched its trunk and said, "It is like a snake." Another touched its ear and said, "It is like a fan." Each spoke truly, yet none held the whole. So it is with happiness. Each teaching, each tradition, each individual experience may reveal a part, but not the entirety. Only when we see that all perspectives are partial do we begin to understand the whole. This is why rigid formulas fail. They assume a single path, a single answer, a single truth. But happiness is a tapestry woven from many threads, and no single strand can hold it alone. The Dharma invites us to walk gently, to experiment with mindfulness, compassion, generosity, patience, and see how they flower in our own lives. For one person, the practice of meditation may open vast horizons. For another, service to others may unlock the heart. For another still, it may be the quiet act of mindful breathing in daily tasks. None is wrong. All are threads leading to peace. The Buddha himself did not command, "Follow only me." Instead, he offered the image of a raft. His teachings were like a raft to cross the river of suffering. But once across, even the raft must be set down. To cling even to the teachings is to carry unnecessary weight. How much more so to cling to formulas offered by those who claim to know the only way? True wisdom is flexible. It listens. It learns. It adapts. Reflect on your own journey. How many times have you thought, "If I only follow this advice, then I will finally be happy"? Perhaps it worked for a time, but then life changed, and the formula no longer fit. This is natural. The conditions of our lives are ever shifting, like the seasons. A practice that nourishes you in one season may not serve in another. To be wise is to adapt, to listen inwardly, to find harmony with the present conditions. The Dharma is not a cage of rules, but a compass that points you back to the truth of impermanence, compassion, and interbeing. This is why mindfulness is so essential. It is not about imposing a formula, but about seeing clearly in each moment what is needed. When anger arises, mindfulness notices it and offers patience. When sadness arises, mindfulness embraces it and offers compassion. When joy arises, mindfulness recognizes it and offers gratitude. Happiness, then, is not a formula, but a continual practice of awareness, adjusting gently, responding with care. Think of a musician tuning a lute. There is no single way to tune it once and be done. The strings change with humidity, with use, with time. The musician must listen carefully, adjust continually, finding the balance again and again. In the same way, happiness is the art of tuning the strings of life. There is no single formula, no final adjustment. It is a living practice, renewed with each breath. And yet, this is not a cause for despair. It is a cause for freedom. For if happiness were a rigid formula, those who could not follow it would be excluded. But because happiness is a living practice, every being can discover their own way. The path is wide enough for all, the wealthy and the poor, the strong and the weak, the joyful and the grieving. Each can find their own balance, their own expression of compassion, wisdom, and mindfulness. So, let us release the grasping for formulas. Let us instead cultivate trust in awareness itself. As you breathe now, feel the uniqueness of your own path. No one else has lived your life, carried your burdens or held your joys, your happiness cannot look exactly like another's, and it need not. The Dharma shines equally upon all, but each heart reflects it in its own way. Like moonlight falling on countless lakes, each reflection is different, yet all come from the same light. Tonight, rest in the truth that you do not need a perfect formula. You need only to walk gently, to breathe mindfully, to act with compassion, and to return again and again to awareness. In this continual practice, happiness arises not as a fixed goal, but as a living presence, always unfolding, always unique, always enough. There is a doorway to happiness that many overlook, though it stands always before us. It is the doorway of self-knowledge, the gentle turning inward to see ourselves clearly. The Dharma teaches that without knowing the mind, we are like travelers lost in a forest at night, stumbling in circles, mistaking shadows for dangers and trees for enemies. But when we bring a lantern into that forest, we see the path for what it is, and our fear begins to dissolve. In the same way, mindfulness is the lantern that allows us to see the mind, and in seeing, we begin to understand. Self-knowledge does not mean clinging to every thought or analyzing every detail of who we believe we are. Rather, it means watching the flow of the mind with calm awareness. Like a river observed from the shore, thoughts, emotions, sensations, they come and go, rising like waves, dissolving like foam. When we watch them without grasping, without judgment, we begin to see that they are not fixed, not solid, not me, in the way we once believed. We see instead a dance of impermanence. And in this vision lies freedom. Zen tradition expresses this beautifully. To study the self is to forget the self. At first, this may sound puzzling, but when you sit in stillness and observe the mind, you realize that the self you cling to is only a collection of passing states. Anger comes, and you call it, "I am angry." Sadness comes, and you say, "I am sad." But when you watch closely, you see that these emotions arise, linger, and fade. If they were truly you, they would remain forever. Instead, they pass, and something new takes their place. To study the self deeply is to discover that the solid self you defend does not exist. To forget this imagined self is to remember your true nature, spacious, fluid, interconnected with all things. Self-knowledge, then, is not about building an identity, but about softening it. It is about learning to rest in awareness rather than in labels. When you know yourself as awareness, you are no longer enslaved by every thought or feeling. You can experience anger without being consumed, sadness without being broken, joy without being intoxicated. You hold each with gentle hands, knowing it will pass. In this way, happiness arises not from controlling the mind, but from understanding it. There is a story of a monk who sat by a river each day, gazing into its waters. A villager asked him, "Why do you sit here so often?" The monk replied, "Because each time I look, I see myself. When the water is turbulent, I see my restless thoughts. When the water is still, I see my true nature. The river teaches me what I need to know. In the same way, the practice of self-knowledge is like watching the river of the mind. Sometimes it is muddy, sometimes clear, but in watching, you learn patience, and in patience, you discover peace. Modern life often pulls us away from this self-knowing. We are taught to look outward, to measure ourselves by comparison, to define ourselves by achievement, to distract ourselves with constant stimulation. In doing so, we become strangers to our own hearts. We may know the news of the world, the schedules of others, the endless updates of technology, but we do not know the movements of our own breath, the quiet rhythm of our own mind. The Dharma calls us back, gently, inviting us to turn inward, not to escape the world, but to meet it with clarity and compassion. When you know yourself, you no longer react blindly. You notice when anger begins to rise, and instead of striking with harsh words, you breathe, you pose, you choose kindness. You notice when fear begins to take hold, and instead of retreating into panic, you remind yourself of impermanence, of interbeing, of the present moment. In this way, self-knowledge becomes the foundation of wise action. Happiness follows naturally, for you are no longer dragged helplessly by the currents of the mind. You are the one who sees, and in seeing, you are free. Let us practice this together now. Close your eyes and breathe. Notice what arises in the mind. Perhaps a thought of the past, perhaps a worry of the future, perhaps a sensation in the body. Whatever it is, observe it gently. Do not push it away. Do not cling to it. Simply note, this is here now, and as you watch, you will see it changes. It shifts, dissolves, makes way for something new. In this observation, you learn the truth of impermanence, and in learning impermanence, you loosen the grip of self. In this loosening lies joy. The great burden of life is not the presence of thoughts and emotions, but the belief that they define us, that we must protect them, defend them, obey them. When you see that they are not solid, the burden falls away. You become lighter, freer, more open to the simple happiness of the present. Self-knowledge also teaches humility. When you see your own mind clearly, you recognize its patterns, its habits, its delusions. You see how easily it can be caught by desire, anger, fear, and in seeing this, you become less quick to judge others, for you understand that they too are carried by the currents of their own minds. Compassion arises naturally, not from effort, but from recognition. To know yourself is to know others, for beneath the surface, all minds share the same patterns. Imagine standing before a vast mirror, not of glass but of awareness. In it, you see your thoughts, your emotions, your habits. At first, you may not like what you see, but as you look longer, you begin to understand. You see the causes and conditions that shaped you, the seeds you have watered, the impermanence of each state. Slowly, judgment foders, replaced by compassion. This is the gift of self-knowledge, not pride, not despair, but gentle acceptance. And in acceptance, happiness arises. So tonight, as you breathe, let the lantern of mindfulness illuminate the forest of your mind. Do not fear what you find there. Every thought, every feeling, every memory is simply a tree along the path. Some tall, some twisted, some flowering, some bare. Walk among them with calm awareness. In doing so, you will come to know yourself. And in knowing yourself, you will discover that the self you once defended so fiercely was never solid. It was always a dance of impermanence, a play of conditions. To see this is to forget the self, and in forgetting, to awaken to happiness. There is a misunderstanding that often clouds our view of happiness. Many believe that to be happy means to never feel sadness, to never know fear, to never taste the bitterness of anger. They imagine happiness as a perfect sky without a single cloud, forever blue, forever calm. But the Dharma reminds us this is not the way of life. The sky is not less beautiful because clouds pass through it. In fact, its vastness is revealed in the way it holds storms as well as sunlight. In the same way, happiness is not the absence of difficult emotions, but the capacity to embrace them without being shattered. The Buddha spoke of the second arrow. The first arrow is life itself, the pain of loss, the sting of illness, the inevitability of change. This arrow cannot be avoided, for it is part of the human condition. But the second arrow is self-inflicted. It is the resistance, the blame, the story we weave around the pain. This should not happen to me. This is unfair. This is unbearable. The first arrow wounds the body or the heart. The second arrow wounds the mind. And often, it is the second arrow that causes the deepest suffering. Reflect for a moment on your own life. Perhaps you have lost something precious, a relationship, an opportunity, a dream. The pain of loss was sharp, undeniable. That was the first arrow. But then came the thoughts. Why me? I should have done more. I will never recover. These thoughts pierced again and again. Long after the event had passed, this was the second arrow. And yet, the Dharma teaches that while we cannot avoid the first, we can learn to put down the second. We can choose not to add suffering to pain. How is this done? Through awareness. When difficulty arises, we breathe and recognize this is pain. We do not resist. We do not deny. We do not multiply it with stories. We simply acknowledge it as it is, like a wave rising on the ocean. And just as a wave cannot last forever, neither can this feeling. By allowing it to be, by not striking ourselves with the second arrow, we discover a strange and gentle truth even in the midst of pain. There can be peace, happiness. Zen is not a fragile glass that shatters when touched by sorrow. It is more like a great river, wide enough to hold both joy and grief, both ease and difficulty. The river does not cease to be itself because rain falls into it, or because stones lie at its bed. It flows on, carrying all, embracing all. When we cultivate mindfulness, we become like this river, We allow our emotions to flow through us, without clinging, without fear, without adding arrows to the natural currents of life. There is a story of a monk who was once insulted harshly by a stranger. Instead of reacting, he bowed and said, "Thank you for your gift, but I do not need to accept it." The insult was like an arrow offered to him, but he chose not to take it. In the same way, we can choose not to take up the second arrow of suffering. We cannot stop words from being spoken, nor losses from occurring, nor aging from unfolding, but we can choose whether to carry them as endless burdens or to let them pass through like wind through the trees. This is the paradox. The Dharma reveals to be truly happy is to allow sorrow its place. For when we try to banish sorrow, we create tension, resistance, and fear. But when we accept it as part of life's tapestry, we find that it softens, that it teaches, that it even deepens our capacity for joy. Without night, how would we know the beauty of dawn without loss? How could we treasure what we hold now without sorrow? How could compassion blossom? Consider the lotus, beloved in Buddhist teachings. It grows from the mud, and only because of the mud can it bloom so pure and radiant. If you demanded a lotus without mud, you would never see its flower. In the same way, if you demand happiness without sorrow, you will never taste the full depth of joy. The mud and the flower belong together, and together they form beauty. So, when sadness visits you, sit with it as you would with an old friend. Offer it tea. Listen to its voice. Let it teach you what it has come to teach. Perhaps it is showing you where you have been clinging. Perhaps it is reminding you of your love for someone or something precious. Perhaps it is simply asking you to slow down, to feel more deeply. Do not send it away in anger. Sit with it. In time, it will go on its way, leaving behind wisdom. Happiness is not the opposite of sadness, but the space that holds it. The Buddha did not promise that the enlightened life is free of pain. He promised that it is free of the chains of suffering. Pain may come, but the second arrow need not follow. Anger may arise, but it need not burn endlessly. Fear may whisper, but it need not rule the heart. This is the freedom of awareness, the freedom that gives rise to true happiness. As you breathe tonight, notice what feelings are present in you. Do not label them as good or bad. Simply acknowledge this is here. Perhaps joy is here, perhaps sorrow, perhaps calm, perhaps restlessness. All are waves upon the ocean of your being. You are not the wave. You are the ocean, and the ocean can hold them all. So rest now, in the vastness of your own awareness. Let the arrows of resistance fall away. Feel the gentle truth that happiness does not mean never knowing sorrow. It means knowing sorrow fully, without fear, without clinging, without striking yourself again and again. In this way, even difficulty becomes part of peace, and even pain becomes a teacher. When we open our hearts to the truth of life, we begin to see that difficult emotions are not enemies. They are not intruders to be banished, nor stains to be scrubbed away. Instead, they are teachers, carrying messages we may not yet understand. Anger, grief, fear, loneliness, Each one arises not to destroy us, but to point towards something we need to see more clearly. In the Dharma, nothing is wasted. Even pain can become the soil from which wisdom grows. Think of the lotus once more. It does not bloom in clear water. It grows from thick mud, from decay, from darkness. Without the mud, the flower cannot exist. Our difficult emotions are this mud. They are heavy, sometimes unpleasant, but they carry the nutrients of awakening. To reject them is to reject the very material that allows the heart to flower. To embrace them with mindfulness is to allow them to be transformed into beauty. Consider anger. At first, it feels like fire, burning everything in its path. If we act on it blindly, we cause harm to ourselves and others. But if we sit with it in awareness, we may discover its root, often a wound, a fear, or a longing for respect and care. When we see this root, anger softens into understanding. Understanding, then, blossoms into compassion. What once burned destructively becomes the very fuel for patience and love. Or think of grief. When someone we love is gone, grief crashes into us like waves upon the shore. To resist it is to drown. To embrace it is to float. If we allow grief to flow through us, we discover its message. It speaks of love. Grief is love that has nowhere to go. Love that aches for what is absent. To honor grief is to honor love itself. And when we hold grief gently, it teaches us to treasure the present, to value each breath of those we still hold dear. Fear, too, as leçon. It narrows our world, makes us hide, makes us doubt our strength. But if we sit quietly with fear, breathing into its tightness, we may hear its whisper, I long for safety. I long for trust. In seeing this, we learn not to hate fear, but to offer it compassion. Slowly, fear becomes the doorway to courage. For true courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to walk with it. Every difficult emotion, when held with mindfulness, transforms. The alchemy of the heart is such that poison can become medicine, that wounds can become wisdom. But this requires presence. If we push emotions away, they return with greater force. If we drown in them, we lose ourselves. The middle way is to hold them gently, neither rejecting nor clinging. Like a parent holding a crying child, the Buddha often taught his disciples to welcome emotions as visitors. When joy comes, welcome it. When sorrow comes, welcome it. When anger knocks, open the door and say, I see you. Each visitor will stay for a time and then depart. Non è permanent. But each has something to teach. If you slam the door on them, they will only knock louder. If you cling to them, they will never leave. But if you welcome them with mindfulness, they bow and pass on, leaving a gift of insight. Let us practice this in imagination. Close your eyes and picture a small room within your heart. Into this room, one by one, émotions enter. First comes anger, its face red and fierce. You do not chase it out. You offer it a seat and say, I see your pain. I hear your voice. Slowly, its fire dims. Then comes sadness, carrying heavy tears. You offer it tea. and in your presence, it softens, revealing the love hidden within it. Then comes fear, trembling at the threshold. You take its hand, whisper, "You are safe," and it begins to calm. Each visitor comes and goes, and your room remains. You are the host, not the guest. This is the power of mindfulness. The transformation of pain into wisdom is not abstract. It is lived. You may recall a time when anger taught you patience, when grief deepened your compassion, when fear awakened your strength. At the time, it may have felt unbearable. But now, looking back, you see the seeds of growth. This is why the Dharma invites us not to run from difficulty, but to embrace it with awareness. Every challenge, every sorrow, every storm is an opportunity to cultivate the lotus of wisdom. Happiness, then, is not the elimination of hard feelings. It is the skill of turning them into teachers. Just as a farmer uses compost to enrich the soil, we use our suffering to nourish the heart. Without compost, the earth is poor. Without suffering, compassion remains shallow. The greatest teachers are often the hardest moments. And when we see this clearly, even pain becomes meaningful. Even sorrow becomes sacred. So, as you rest tonight, ask yourself gently, what emotion is visiting me now? Do not resist it. Do not cling to it. Simply welcome it. Listen to its message. Thank it for what it teaches. And then, let it go when it is ready. In this way, you become the alchemist of your own heart, transforming mud into lotus, sorrow into wisdom, fear into courage, anger into compassion. The human heart is tender, more tender than we often allow ourselves to admit. A single word, spoken in haste or carelessness, can echo within us for days. A glance of disapproval can pierce more deeply than we expect. We may appear strong, resilient, unshaken on the outside, but inside we carry the bruises of words and gestures that cut into our sensitivity. This is not weakness, it is part of being human. The Dharma reminds us that sensitivity is the very soil of compassion. Without it, we could not truly feel the joys and sorrows of others. Yet this same sensitivity, if unguarded, can become a source of prolonged suffering. A harsh word may arise like a small storm, and though the one who spoke it has long forgotten, we may replay it over and over in our minds, stabbing ourselves again and again with the memory. The Buddha compared this to carrying a burden long after it has been set down. Someone places a heavy stone in your hands. You accept it. But even after they leave, you continue to hold it, exhausting yourself unnecessarily. How then can we meet our sensitivity with wisdom? The answer lies in the practice of metta-loving kindness. Loving kindness is the medicine for the wounds of harshness. It is the gentle balm we place upon our own hearts and upon the hearts of others. When we cultivate metta, we learn to look upon ourselves with kindness instead of judgment, and to look upon others with understanding instead of resentment. Consider a time when someone's words hurt you. What was your first reaction? Perhaps anger, perhaps sadness, perhaps retreat. Now imagine instead that you paused, placed your hand gently upon your heart, and whispered inwardly, May I be safe. May I be peaceful. May I be free from suffering. These simple words, offered to yourself, can soften the sting. They remind you that beneath the wound, you are still worthy of love, still capable of peace. And then, when you are ready, you can extend the same wish toward the one who hurt you. May you be safe. May you be peaceful. May you be free from suffering. At first, this may feel impossible, for the heart resists forgiving. But if you reflect deeply, you see that harsh words often spring from someone's own pain, their own ignorance, their own unhealed wounds. To respond with metta is not to condone their action, but to free yourself from the poison of hatred. There is a story of a monk who was once insulted by a passerby. Instead of reacting, he bowed and said, "May you be well." The passerby was stunned and asked, "Why do you wish me well when I have just cursed you?" The monk replied, "Because I do not wish to drink the poison you have handed me. I choose kindness instead." This is the wisdom of metta. It is the shield that protects sensitivity without hardening the heart. Sensitivity can be our greatest gift when guided by mindfulness. It allows us to notice the subtle needs of others, to feel their joy, to sense their sorrow. It opens us to connection, to empathy, to compassion. But when we are caught by unexamined sensitivity, it becomes a trap. We relive wounds endlessly. We close ourselves off. We harden into bitterness. The practice of metta transforms sensitivity from a weakness into a strength, from a wound into a doorway for love. Let us practice together in imagination. Close your eyes and picture yourself sitting quietly. A memory arises, a word or gesture that once hurt you. Feel the weight of it in your heart. Now, breathe deeply, and with each breath, whisper inwardly, "May I be peaceful. May I be safe. May I be free." Notice how the tightness begins to soften. Then, when you feel ready, imagine the one who hurt you. Perhaps their face appears, perhaps not. Whisper, "May you be peaceful. May you be safe. May you be free." You need not force forgiveness. Simply plant the seed. In time, with care, it will grow. This practice does not mean we become naive, accepting harm without discernment. The Dharma does not ask us to ignore cruelty or abandon boundaries. It teaches us instead to hold even those who hurt us within the circle of compassion. For hatred cannot end hatred. Only love can. Sensitivity, when guided by metta, becomes a great strength, for it teaches us to meet the sharp edges of life with softness instead of retaliation. Reflect now on your own life. How many harsh words do you still carry? How many memories still weigh upon your heart? What would it feel like to set them down, to release them into the river of compassion? With each release, you become lighter, freer, more open to the happiness of the present. The Buddha once said, "Holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at another. You are the one who is burned." Sensitivity without wisdom may cause us to grip these hot coals, reliving the pain again and again. But when we add metta, we learn to release the coal. We learn that our freedom matters more than our resentment. And in this release, true happiness blooms. So tonight, as you rest, offer yourself loving kindness. Whisper gently to your heart, "May I be safe. May I be peaceful. May I be free." Let these words wrap around you like a blanket of compassion. Then, extend the same wish outward to those you love, to those you know, even to those who have caused you pain. In this way, sensitivity is not a wound to be hidden, but a bridge to connection, a doorway to wisdom, a seed of joy. Suffering is part of life. Yet not all suffering is the same. The Dharma helps us distinguish between what must be borne and what is added unnecessarily by the mind. There is the suffering that arises from the very nature of existence: birth, aging, sickness, death, change, loss. These are woven into the fabric of being human. They cannot be avoided, no matter how we try. This is what the Buddha called dukkha, the universal truth of unsatisfactoriness. And then there is the suffering we create ourselves, the endless replaying of insults, the grasping after what cannot be held, the resistance to what cannot be changed. This is like carrying a second burden on top of the first. Imagine being struck by rain. The first drops fall. You cannot stop them. This is the natural suffering of life. But then imagine you begin to curse the sky, to rage at the clouds, to demand that rain should never fall on you. That anger is the second burden. The rain is not made worse by your fury, yet your heart is. In the same way, illness, aging, and loss will visit every one of us. We cannot control their arrival, but we can choose whether to add the weight of resentment, bitterness, and denial. The Buddha once spoke of anger as carrying a hot coal. We pick it up, intending to throw it at someone else, but all the while it burns our own hand. How often do we carry these coals, refusing to let them drop, though they scorch us day after day? The suffering of life is already heavy. Why add the heat of our own anger? Reflect for a moment on your own burdens. Perhaps you have faced illness, grief, disappointment. These are the first arrows, the rains of life. But then, ask, what did you add? Did you hold the coal of resentment, thinking it would protect you? Did you replay words or events, stabbing yourself with them again and again? Did you carry stories about how life should have been, piling weight upon your back? If so, you have known the second burden, the suffering we create. The Dharma does not condemn us for this. It understands how natural it is for the mind to resist pain, but it also offers us a way to release. When we notice the difference between necessary and unnecessary suffering, we create space. We realize this illness is here, but I need not add anger. This loss has come, but I need not add blame. This change has happened, but I need not add despair. In this space, the weight lessens. Consider the story of a monk walking with a heavy sack of grain. A passerby offered to carry it for a time. The monk gratefully agreed. When the sack was returned, the monk noticed how light his steps felt without it. He laughed and said, "Why did I not set it down sooner?" In the same way, we can ask ourselves, why do I carry so many unnecessary burdens? Why do I hold the sack of resentment? the stone of regret, the coal of anger. What would happen if I set them down? The truth is, life already asks us to carry enough. We must face sickness, aging, death, uncertainty. These cannot be put down. They are part of being alive. But the stones we add: judgment, comparison, resentment. These are optional. When we learn to distinguish between the two, we free ourselves. We stop demanding that life be free of all pain. And instead, we stop creating extra pain on top of what already is. This does not mean indifference. It does not mean ignoring injustice or refusing to grieve. It means grieving fully without chaining ourselves to despair. It means responding to injustice with compassion and wise action, without poisoning ourselves with hatred. It means accepting impermanence as part of the path, rather than clinging to illusions of permanence. In this way, even necessary suffering becomes lighter, because it is not multiplied by the unnecessary. Take a moment now to breathe. Feel into your own body, your own mind. What weight are you carrying that is truly unavoidable? Perhaps illness, perhaps change, perhaps loss. Acknowledge it gently. This is here. This belongs to life. And then ask, what weight have I added? Perhaps anger, perhaps endless stories, perhaps comparisons. With your next exhale, imagine setting this second burden down. Feel your shoulders loosen, your heart expand. Notice how much lighter it feels to carry only what is truly necessary. Happiness does not mean never carrying burdens. It means carrying only what belongs to life, and not adding what belongs only to the restless mind. A wise traveler does not fill their bag with stones for no reason. They carry only what is needed for the journey. We too can learn to travel light. So tonight, as you prepare for rest, reflect. What coal of anger can you drop? What stone of regret can you set down? What unnecessary burden can you release? You do not need to carry them into tomorrow. Life will give you enough to hold. Let the rest fall away. And as you let go, feel the lightness of a heart unburdened. In that lightness, happiness appears, not as something chased, but as something revealed. When the unnecessary weight is gone, there is a question that lies quietly within every heart. What am I willing to embrace as part of life? Not what I desire, not what I hope for, but what I will accept as the price of being human. The Dharma teaches us that to live is to walk hand in hand with impermanence, with change, with loss as well as gain. To reject this truth is to suffer endlessly, for we will be fighting against the current of a river that cannot be stopped. To accept it is to find freedom, not because life becomes easier, but because we no longer demand that it be otherwise. Impermanence, or anicca, is the great teacher. Every breath you take proves it. Inhale, and it passes. Exhale, and it passes. No breath can be held. No breath can be stored. Life itself is this flow, this endless arising and passing away. The seasons teach the same. Spring blossoms, summer ripens, autumn withers, winter rests. Each change is necessary, each stage inevitable. To resist impermanence is to resist life itself. Yet how often do we grasp? We cling to youth as though it will remain. We cling to relationships as though they will never shift. We cling to health, to possessions, to roles, as though they are permanent fixtures. But impermanence whispers, this too will change. And when the change comes, we cry out in shock. Though the truth was always before us, the suffering lies not in the change itself, but in our refusal to accept it. Acceptance is not resignation. It is not saying, nothing matters. It is saying, this is the way things are, and I will live with open eyes. When a flower blooms, you do not demand it stay forever. You cherish it while it lasts, knowing that its fading is part of its beauty. In the same way, to accept impermanence is to love more deeply, not less. For when you know that every moment is fleeting, you hold it tenderly, with gratitude, without taking it for granted. The Buddha once told the story of a woman named Kisa Gotami, whose child had died. Stricken with grief, she sought a way to bring him back to life. The Buddha told her to find a mustard seed from a household that had never known death. She went from door to door, but in every home she learned the same truth. Each family had lost someone. At last she returned, empty-handed, but with eyes opened. Death and change are part of every life. In this realization, her grief softened, and she began to walk the path of wisdom. What are we willing to accept as part of life? Can we accept aging, not as an enemy, but as a teacher of humility? Can we accept loss, not as punishment, but as a reminder of love? Can we accept uncertainty, not as a curse, but as the very essence of freedom? These are not easy questions, but they are liberating ones. For when you say yes to impermanence, you step out of struggle and into flow. Imagine standing at the edge of the sea. The waves come, one after another. You cannot stop them, no matter how you shout. If you resist, you will be knocked down. But if you accept, if you flow with the rhythm, you find yourself lifted, carried, even at peace. Life's waves of change are the same. They will come whether you resist or not. To embrace them is to float. To fight them is to drown. This is not to say we must accept injustice or remain passive in the face of harm. The Dharma calls us to act with compassion and wisdom where we can. But even as we act, we hold in our hearts the truth of impermanence. Success may not last. Failure may not last either. Joy will fade. Sorrow will fade as well. With this vision, we act without clinging, without despair, walking gently between hope and fear. As you reflect now, ask yourself, what in my life am I still refusing to accept? Is it the passing of time upon my body? Is it the changing of relationships? Is it the truth of uncertainty? Feel the weight of this resistance, like a knot in the chest. Then imagine loosening that knot with a breath. Whisper inwardly, this too is life. This too I accept. Notice how the heart softens, how the burden lightens. Acceptance does not erase sorrow, but it makes it bearable. It does not erase pain, but it makes it meaningful. It turns life into a path, not a prison. And in this path, happiness arises, not as a constant euphoria, but as a quiet strength, a steady flame that does not flicker with every wind. Let us imagine together, you are holding a fragile cup of clay. You know it may break at any time. Because of this, you hold it carefully, gratefully. You drink slowly, savoring each sip. The knowledge of its impermanence does not diminish your joy, it deepens it. In the same way, when we accept the impermanence of life, we love more deeply, live more fully, and suffer less when change arrives. So, tonight, as you lie down to rest, let impermanence be your teacher. Do not fear it. Do not resist it. Let it remind you that this moment, this breath, this heartbeat, is precious beyond measure. To accept impermanence is to step into freedom. And in freedom, happiness is found. Many people believe that the happiest life is the one free from all suffering. A life without difficulty, without tears, without hardship. But the Dharma shows us another truth. Those who are most deeply fulfilled are not those who have escaped suffering, but those who have embraced it as part of the path. Happiness does not arise from avoiding pain, but from transforming our relationship with it. The first noble truth teaches that suffering is part of life. Birth, aging, sickness, death, separation from what we love, meeting what we do not wish for. All of these are woven into the fabric of existence. To pretend otherwise is to live in illusion. But the second noble truth teaches that much of our suffering comes from craving, from clinging, from our resistance to what is. And so the practice is not to eliminate all pain, but to soften the craving and resistance that magnify it. The fulfilled person, then, is not untouched by sorrow. They too lose loved ones. They too face illness. They too walk through storms of uncertainty. But they do not add chains of resentment and denial. They allow pain to be pain, grief to be grief, anger to be anger. They breathe with it, sit with it, bow to it, and in doing so, they transform it into wisdom. Think of the great trees in the forest. They stand tall not because they were never struck by wind, but because they learned to bend. Their roots grew deep precisely because storms tested them. In the same way, a fulfilled heart is not one that never breaks, but one that has been broken and opened again and again, until compassion flows freely through every crack. When we resist suffering, we become rigid, and rigidity shatters easily. When we welcome suffering as part of life's teaching, we become supple, and suppleness survives. The fulfilled person does not fear sorrow, because they know it can be carried, and even more, they know it can teach. Each difficulty becomes a doorway to deeper understanding. Each loss becomes a reminder of love. Each challenge becomes a chance to cultivate patience, resilience, and compassion. This is why the Dharma describes suffering as noble. Noble, not because it is pleasant, but because it is a teacher that ennobles those who learn from it. The first noble truth is not meant to depress us, but to free us. When you stop demanding a life without suffering, you stop fighting reality. And when you stop fighting reality, peace arises. Consider the story of the Buddha himself. He did not awaken because he lived in comfort. In fact, he left behind luxury to face directly the truths of sickness, aging, and death. His awakening came not from escaping suffering, but from looking deeply into it until its causes were revealed and its chains broken. In his footsteps, we too can learn that fulfillment does not come from hiding from life, but from facing it with open eyes. Reflect for a moment on your own life. Have you not grown wiser after times of hardship? Have you not discovered strength after walking through pain? Have you not found deeper compassion after tasting sorrow? These are the fruits of suffering when met with awareness. They are not rewards in the sense of prizes, but natural blossoms of the seeds planted by difficulty. Without the winter, spring could not be so fragrant. Without the night, dawn could not be so luminous. The fulfilled person accepts this rhythm. They do not cling desperately to joy, nor do they despair endlessly in sorrow. They flow with both. As a river flows with rains and droughts, they see that happiness is not a fixed state, but a path of balance, a continual returning to awareness in the midst of all experiences. Let us imagine together, you are walking on a mountain path. The trail is steep, your legs ash, stones cut your feet. At times, you wish to turn back. Yet, you continue, and when you reach the summit, the view opens vast valleys, rivers winding, the horizon endless. The struggle of the climb made the view possible. Without effort, there is no reward. Without hardship, there is no depth of fulfillment. In the same way, the peaks of happiness are seen most clearly after valleys of suffering. The Buddha compared the human heart to a lute. If the string is pulled too tightly, it snaps. If it is left too loose, it cannot sing. Only in balance does it produce harmony. The fulfilled person is like the lute, holding both joy and sorrow in balance, playing life's music with gentleness. Their happiness is not fragile, for it is not based on conditions. It is rooted in wisdom, compassion, and acceptance of the full spectrum of being human. So, tonight, as you rest, reflect on the storms you have faced. Do not see them only as wounds. See them also as teachers. What patience did they awaken in you? What compassion did they draw forth? What strength did they reveal? Let gratitude arise, even for the difficulties, for they have shaped the depth of your heart. Fulfillment is not found in escaping suffering, but in embracing it wisely. Those who walk this path discover a happiness that is not destroyed by pain, a joy that coexists with sorrow, a peace that flows through both storm and stillness. This is the noble way, the way of freedom. We often think of happiness as a destination, a place we will reach after many struggles, as though somewhere in the future there lies a final state where all problems vanish and life is only ease. But the Dharma whispers, a gentler truth: happiness is not a finish line to be crossed, but a path to be walked. It is not something we one day possess forever. It is something we cultivate in each moment, step by step, breath by breath. The Eightfold Path offers this vision clearly. Each of its steps: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness. And right concentration is not a goal completed once, but a living practice. To walk this path is to continually nurture the seeds of wisdom and compassion in the soil of daily life. Just as a garden requires steady tending, happiness too requires ongoing care. It cannot be planted once and left unattended. It grows only through presence, patience, and effort. Imagine a traveler walking along a quiet road. The horizon stretches endlessly, but the traveler does not demand to arrive all at once. They walk steadily, step after step, and in each step there is the journey itself. If the traveler insists only on the destination, they miss the fragrance of flowers by the roadside, the sound of birds, the warmth of sunlight upon their skin. But if they walk with awareness, every step is already a part of arrival. Happiness is like this. It is not at the end of the road. It is in how you walk now. This is why the Dharma reminds us to bring awareness to the smallest actions. When you speak kindly, you plant happiness. When you act with honesty, you plant happiness. When you breathe mindfully, you plant happiness. These seeds may seem small, but over time they blossom into the forest of peace that surrounds your life. If you wait for happiness to appear all at once, you will wait endlessly. But if you cultivate it moment by moment, you realize it was here all along, waiting to be recognized. Right view is the beginning. To see life as it truly is, impermanent, interconnected, without fixed self, is to free yourself from endless illusion. When you see clearly, you no longer chase shadows. You no longer demand permanence from what cannot last. This clarity itself is happiness, for it dissolves confusion. Right intention follows the choice to live with kindness, with compassion, with the vow not to harm. Every intention is like the rudder of a boat, guiding the direction of your journey. With wholesome intentions, you steer your life toward peace. No matter how rough the waters, right speech, right action, right livelihood, these shape how we move in the world. When our words are truthful and gentle, when our actions are guided by integrity, when our livelihood does not cause harm, we live without the heavy weight of regret. This lightness is itself happiness. For the heart that does not carry guilt is free to rest. Right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. These are the practices of the inner life. Right effort means cultivating wholesome states and releasing unwholesome ones, like tending a fire, so it burns steadily without flaring out of control. Right mindfulness means remembering to be present, again and again, like returning to the anchor of the breath whenever the mind wanders. Right concentration means gathering the scattered rays of the mind into a steady flame, illuminating the path with clarity. Together, these 8 steps are not a rigid formula, but a gentle rhythm. They are the way of walking wisely, of turning every moment into part of the journey of awakening. Happiness is not in reaching the end, but in aligning each step with this path. Reflect for a moment on your own daily life. How often do you think, "I will be happy when the task is finished, when the problem is solved, when the future is secure"? And yet, when that moment arrives, another condition quickly replaces it. the mind leaps forward endlessly, never allowing happiness to rest here and now. The Eightfold Path calls us back. It says, "Do not wait. Walk with awareness now, and happiness walks with you." There is a story told of a monk sweeping the temple courtyard. A visitor asked, "Why do you spend so much time on such a simple task?" The monk smiled and replied, "I am not sweeping to finish. I am sweeping to sweep. In each motion, I find peace." This is the essence of the path, not rushing to completion, but dwelling fully in the act itself. Whether walking, sweeping, eating, or resting, each moment can be a step of happiness if lived with awareness. Let us imagine together, you are walking slowly through a garden. With each step, you place your foot mindfully on the earth. Breathing gently, you feel the ground beneath you, solid and steady. You hear the whisper of leaves, the song of birds. Each step is not a step toward somewhere else, but a step into the fullness of now. As you walk like this, you realize this is happiness, not tomorrow, not when conditions are perfect, but here, in this step, in this breath. So tonight, let the idea of happiness as a destination fall away. Do not demand that it appear complete and permanent. Instead, see it as a path unfolding beneath your feet. With each mindful breath, with each compassionate choice, with each gentle act, you are already walking in happiness. And as long as you continue walking with awareness, you are never far from peace. Happiness is often imagined as something extraordinary, something rare, something to be pursued with great effort. But the Dharma shows us that the deepest happiness is found not in faraway places, not in future dreams, but in the simple presence of this very moment. To be mindful, to be truly here with body, breath, and heart. This is already the taste of peace. When you sit quietly and feel the air entering and leaving your lungs, you may realize that you are touching life itself. The breath is so ordinary that we rarely notice it. Yet, without it, nothing else would be possible. To return to the breath is to return to the miracle of being alive. Each inhalation is a gift. Each exhalation is a release. In the awareness of breathing, the mind settles, the body relaxes, and happiness arises naturally, not as a reward, but as the unfolding of what was always present. The Buddha often taught mindfulness of the body as a gateway to peace, to notice the rise and fall of the chest, the weight of the body resting on the earth, the contact of hands, the sensation of air against the skin. All of this anchors us in the present. When the mind wanders into regrets of the past or fears of the future, suffering grows. But when we return to the body, we return to now. And in now, there is no regret, no fear, only the simplicity of being. Happiness does not demand extraordinary conditions. It requires presence. Think of a child who delights in watching an insect crawl along a branch, or in feeling the rain on their face. The child is not waiting for a perfect future. They are alive to the moment. We too can remember this natural capacity. With mindfulness, even the simplest act becomes a source of joy. Drinking water, we taste clarity. Walking, we feel the support of the earth. Listening, We hear not only sound, but the vast silence that holds it. Consider how often we miss this. We eat, but do not taste. Thinking, instead of work or worry. We walk, but do not feel. Lost in plans and distractions. We rest, but do not rest. Scrolling endlessly through noise. And then we wonder why happiness seems absent. But the Dharma points gently. Happiness was here all along, waiting only for you to notice. It is not absent, it is overlooked. There is a story of a teacher who asked his students, "When do you experience peace?" Some answered, "When I meditate." Others said, "When I am in nature." Others still, "When I am with loved ones." The teacher smiled and said, "Peace is not in those places. Peace is in your presence. Wherever you bring mindfulness, peace is there. Without mindfulness, even in the most beautiful places, peace cannot be found. This is the truth of happiness as presence. Imagine yourself now lying in stillness. You feel the ground beneath you, solid, steady. You notice the rhythm of your breath, rising and falling like gentle waves. You hear the sounds around you, perhaps distant, perhaps near. Instead of pushing them away, you let them be part of the moment. All of it, the breath, the body, the sounds, the silence is here, and you are aware of it. This is happiness. It is not excitement, not euphoria. Buddha quiet, steady contentment that holds you like a soft blanket. The practice of mindfulness is like polishing a mirror. At first, the mirror is clouded with dust, thoughts, worries, distractions. But with each breath of awareness, with each moment of presence, the dust clears. Slowly, the mirror shines, reflecting reality as it is. When the mirror is clear, we see not only the world, but also our own nature. We see that happiness was never far. It was always reflected in the clarity of awareness. Happiness, as presence, also means we can rest in the midst of imperfection. Life will never be free of problems, but even in difficulty, we can find moments of peace by returning to the now. When pain arises in the body, mindfulness teaches us to notice it without adding fear. When sorrow arises in the heart, mindfulness teaches us to hold it gently without drowning in it. In this way, we discover that happiness is not the absence of pain, but the spaciousness to hold it without being crushed. Take a breath now. Feel the air filling your lungs. As you exhale, feel the release, the softening. In this breath alone, there is peace. Do not wait for a grand achievement, for a future without difficulty. Let the breath remind you that happiness is here, in the rhythm of life itself. To live mindfully is to transform the ordinary into the extraordinary. Washing dishes becomes a meditation when you feel the water on your hands, the sound of bubbles, the rhythm of movement. Walking to the market becomes a meditation when you notice the earth beneath your feet, the faces of those around you, the sky above. Sitting in silence becomes a meditation when you hear your own heart beating and recognize the miracle of being alive. The Dharma does not send us searching for happiness in distant lands. It calls us back to the immediacy of now, in this body, in this breath, in this awareness. Happiness is already waiting. All we need to do is arrive. So tonight, as you rest, let go of striving. Let go of waiting. Let go of searching. Place your attention on the breath, on the body, on the stillness of this moment. Feel the presence of life unfolding within you and around you. In this presence, there is nothing missing. In this presence, happiness is complete. When we reflect on happiness, we may notice how often we imagine it as something fragile, something that must be protected from intrusion by sorrow, anger, or fear. We tell ourselves, if only these difficult emotions were gone, then I could be at peace. But the Dharma teaches us another way. Happiness is not the erasure of difficult emotions, but the capacity to welcome them into the vastness of awareness without being broken by them. To live fully is to allow the whole spectrum of human feeling, joy and grief, calm and anger, love and fear, and to see each as part of the great dance of existence. Emotions are not mistakes. They are messengers. Anger, when held wisely, tells us where boundaries have been crossed, where justice longs to be restored. Fear, when seen clearly, shows us what we value, what we wish to protect. Sadness reveals our love for what we have lost. Even loneliness carries a teaching, reminding us of our interdependence, of our need for connection. To try to silence these voices is to lose their wisdom. To listen with mindfulness is to allow them to guide us toward understanding. Yet the danger lies in forgetting that emotions are impermanent. When we cling to them, believing they define us, we suffer. I am angry, we say, as if anger were the whole of our being. I am afraid, as if fear were eternal. But when we observe closely, we see that emotions rise and fall like waves upon the sea. None remain. They appear, swell, break, and dissolve. We are not the waves. We are the sea that holds them. The practice, then, is not to banish emotions, but to welcome them like passing guests. Imagine your heart as a house with many rooms. Joy knocks, and you invite it in, offering it tea. Sorrow knocks, and though your instinct may be to lock the door, you open it gently, allowing it to sit by the fire. Anger arrives, fierce and loud, but you do not argue. You let it speak until it softens. Fear appears, trembling, and you place a warm blanket around its shoulders. Each emotion stays for a while, and then, as all guests do, departs. You remain the host, spacious and steady, unchanged at the core. The Buddha compared this practice to sitting at the riverbank. Thoughts and feelings flow past like leaves upon the water. If you reach to grab them, you are pulled into the current. If you push them away, you stir the waters further. But if you simply sit and watch, you remain free. The river flows, and you remain on the shore. This is the freedom of awareness, to let emotions pass through without drowning in them. Consider how this changes our understanding of happiness. Happiness is not found by eliminating sorrow, for sorrow too has its place. It is not found by silencing anger, for anger too can be transformed into clarity. It is not found by escaping fear, for fear too can guide us toward courage. Happiness is the ability to hold them all with equanimity, knowing that none define us, none last forever, all belong. There is a story from Zen of a student who asked his master, "How can I find peace when my mind is filled with storms?" The master replied, "Do not fight the storms. Open the window and let the wind blow through." Peace is not the absence of wind. It is the openness that allows the wind to pass without resistance. In this openness, even storms lose their power. Reflect now on your own experience. Think of a time when sorrow visited you. Did it not eventually soften, even if only slightly? Think of anger, has it not always passed, leaving space for calm? Think of joy, has it not come unexpectedly? Even after sorrow, each emotion is temporary. None remain forever. When you see this truth, you stop clinging to joy as if it could be trapped, and you stop fearing sorrow as if it could destroy you. You rest instead in the flow, and in that flow, happiness arises. To cultivate this, practice mindfulness of emotions. When joy arises, notice it fully. This is joy. Feel its warmth, its lightness. When sorrow arises, notice this is sorrow. Feel its heaviness, its ache. Do not judge. Do not resist. Simply recognize this is here. And with each recognition, remember, this too will pass. Over time, this practice deepens your trust in impermanence. You realize you do not need to cling. You do not need to fear. You only need to be present. Imagine now that you are sitting beneath a vast sky. Clouds drift across, some white and soft, some dark and heavy. The sky does not resist, nor does it cling. It allows each cloud to pass. You too are this sky. Your emotions are clouds. They come and go, but your awareness remains vast, open, untouched. Happiness is found not in chasing away the clouds, but in recognizing yourself as the sky. So tonight, as you breathe, welcome whatever arises. If joy is here, smile with it. If sorrow is here, hold it gently. If anger is here, listen with patience. If fear is here, offer it compassion. You do not need to banish any of them. You only need to remain aware, vast as the sky, steady as the earth. In this openness, happiness arises, not because emotions are absent, but because you are free within them. In the restless world we inhabit, it often seems as though happiness is something to be purchased, packaged, or acquired. Voices around us whisper constantly, "You will be enough when you own this, when you achieve that, when you become someone greater than who you are now." And so, many spend their days chasing after more possessions, more recognition, more distraction to fill the silence of the heart. Yet the Dharma teaches us that this restlessness is not a path to peace, but a root of suffering. The hunger for more is like drinking salt water. It excites for a moment, but it only deepens the thirst. The Buddha spoke often of santuthi, contentment. Contentment does not mean complacency. nor does it mean giving up on growth or responsibility. It means learning to rest in the sufficiency of the present moment, to recognize the wealth that already surrounds us. When we practice contentment, we discover that the very things we thought were ordinary are in fact extraordinary. A simple meal, eaten with awareness, becomes a banquet. A quiet moment of breathing becomes a sanctuary. A conversation with a friend becomes a jewel beyond price. Imagine for a moment a person who is constantly chasing the next possession. They acquire one treasure, and for a day, they are happy. But soon the shine fades, and their heart races toward the next prize. Contrast this with a person who sits with a simple bowl of rice, savoring its warmth, its fragrance, the care that went into preparing it. That person is already rich, though they may have little by worldly measure, for true wealth is not measured by what we hold, but by how deeply we can appreciate what is already here. Contentment is freedom. When we rest in enough, we are no longer dragged by the endless tide of comparison. We no longer measure ourselves against others, no longer chase the illusions painted by culture. We walk lightly, because our happiness does not depend on gaining what lies outside, but on recognizing what lies within. There is a parable of a monk who owned nothing but a robe and a bowl. One day, he was invited to the home of a wealthy merchant. Seeing the monk's simplicity, the merchant said, "How can you be happy with so little? I have everything, and still I am not satisfied." The monk smiled and replied, "It is not that I have too little, it is that you desire too much." The merchant was silent, for he saw the truth. It was not the lack of possessions, but the endless craving that caused his unrest. This teaching does not call us to abandon life or reject beauty. It invites us to shift our perspective. Instead of chasing endlessly, we pause to notice. Instead of consuming without awareness, we savor. Contentment is not about what we remove, but about how we see. It is the recognition that nothing is missing in this moment. Reflect for a moment on your own life. How often have you thought, "I will be happy when," and when arrived, did it last? Or did another desire soon take its place? This is the cycle of craving, always reaching, never arriving. Contentment breaks this cycle. It says, "I am here, and here is enough." This does not mean we abandon our responsibilities or stop caring for our needs. It means we release the constant story of lack. We care for ourselves and others wisely, but we do not demand that fulfillment come from accumulation. In truth, the more we chase, the more restless we become. But the more we rest in contentment, the more peace we find. Let us imagine. You are sitting at the edge of a small pond. The water is clear, still. A single lotus blooms, reflecting the sunlight. If your mind is restless, you will think, the pond should be larger, the lotus brighter, the sky clearer. But if your mind is content, you will smile and see that everything is already perfect as it is. The pond is small, but infinite in its beauty. The lotus is single, but complete. The sky is vast, and your heart is at ease. Contentment also connects us more deeply with gratitude. When we practice gratitude, We recognize the countless conditions that make this moment possible, the breath that sustains us, the earth that holds us, the people who support us, seen and unseen. Gratitude turns what we have into enough, and enough into abundance. Without gratitude, even great wealth feels empty. With gratitude, even little feels vast. The Buddha compared craving to a fire that burns endlessly. Contentment is the cool stream that quenches it. When we drink from this stream, we no longer feel consumed by desire. We discover a happiness that is steady, simple, and enduring. So, tonight, as you breathe, reflect on what is already here. Notice the bed that supports you, the air that fills your lungs, the silence that holds you. Each one is a gift. Whisper inwardly, "This is enough." In this moment, nothing is missing. Feel how the heart softens, how the mind grows quiet. This is the joy of contentment. Stories and parables have always been the gentle lanterns of wisdom, carrying truths in a way that touches the heart more deeply than arguments or explanations. In the Buddhist tradition, as well as in the words of poets and sages across cultures, these stories remind us that happiness is not hidden in complexity, but revealed in simplicity, in letting go, in returning to what is most essential. There is a Zen tale of a master who poured tea for his student. The cup filled, and yet the master continued to pour until the tea overflowed onto the table. The student exclaimed, "Stop! The cup is already full." The master nodded and said, "Like this cup, your mind is full of opinions, judgments, and attachments. Until you empty it, how can you receive new wisdom?" Happiness too requires this emptying. When the mind is overflowing with desire, comparison, and clinging, there is no space for peace. But when we let go, even just a little, the heart becomes like an empty cup, ready to be filled with the simple joy of the present. Another story tells of a farmer whose horse ran away. The neighbors came and said, "Such bad luck." The farmer simply replied, "Maybe." A week later, the horse returned with 2 wild horses. The neighbors exclaimed, "Such good fortune." The farmer said again, "Maybe." When his son tried to ride one of the wild horses and broke his leg, the neighbors cried, "Such misfortune." The farmer answered, "Maybe." Soon after, soldiers came to conscript the young men of the village. But the farmer's son was spared because of his injury. The neighbors declared, "Such good fortune." And still, the farmer only said, "Maybe." This story reminds us that happiness is not found in clinging to each event as absolutely good or bad, but in resting in the flow of life with equanimity. What appears as loss may hold hidden blessings, and what appears as gain may carry unseen burdens. To rest in, maybe, is to rest in peace. Rumi, the poet of love and longing, offered his own parable in the guest house. He wrote that being human is like being a guest house where every morning new visitors arrive: joy, sorrow, anger, shame. Some are unexpected, some uncomfortable, but each one is to be welcomed. Meet them at the door laughing, he says, and invite them in, for each one has been sent as a guide from beyond. This mirrors the Dharma's teaching that emotions are not enemies but teachers. Happiness is not in locking the door, but in welcoming each guest with curiosity and compassion. Lao Tzu spoke in the voice of rivers and valleys. He said, "The highest good is like water. Water nourishes all things and does not compete. It flows to the low places that others disdain. In this way, it is close to the Tao. If we live like water, gentle, yielding, content to flow where life leads us, happiness arises naturally. To resist life is to break. To flow with it is to find freedom." The Dharma echoes this truth. The middle way is like a river, not too tight, not too loose, always moving, always alive. And then there is the story of the tea ceremony itself, a practice in Zen, not about drinking tea but about presence. The pouring of water, the sound of the kettle, the fragrance rising, the placement of the cup. Each act is performed with mindfulness, with reverence for the ordinary. To an untrained eye, it may seem simple, even trivial, but to the practitioner, it is a doorway to enlightenment. The lesson is clear. Happiness is not waiting in extraordinary events, but in the careful, mindful attention we bring to the most ordinary acts of living. When we weave these stories together, they all point to one truth. Happiness is not in chasing, not in grasping, not in judging, but in letting go, flowing, welcoming, and attending with presence. Whether through the Zen master's empty cup, the farmer's patient maybe, Rumi's guest house, Lao Tzu's water, or the tea ceremony's reverence, we are reminded that peace is already here, beneath the noise, waiting for us to notice. Reflect for a moment on your own life. Which story resonates with you? Do you need to empty your cup, releasing old attachments? Do you need to rest in maybe, trusting the unfolding of events? Do you need to welcome your emotions as guests rather than enemies? Do you need to flow like water, soft yet strong? Or do you need to return to the simplicity of an everyday act, turning it into a meditation of presence? Each story offers a doorway. Each doorway leads to peace. As you breathe now, imagine yourself as the host of your own inner guest house. Joy knocks, and you open the door. Sorrow knocks, and though your instinct is to resist, you welcome it. Engarus, and you say, "Sit, I will listen." Fear enters trembling, and you offer it compassion. In this house, all are welcome. And because all are welcome, the house is at peace. This is happiness, not in control, but in openness, not in perfection, but in compassion. So tonight, let these stories accompany you into rest. Let the Zen master remind you to empty your cup. Let the farmer remind you to say, "Maybe." Let Rumi remind you to welcome all guests. Let Lao Tzu remind you to flow like water. Let the tea ceremony remind you that the sacred lives in the ordinary. In these stories, happiness whispers its truth. It is here, now, in simplicity, in acceptance, in the quiet presence of being alive. When we sit quietly and look deeply, we begin to see that the heart of happiness is not in grand achievements, nor in distant goals, but in the ordinary rhythm of daily life. It is in the way we wake with the morning light, in the way we walk upon the earth, in the way we speak and listen to one another. Happiness is not something we need to reach far for. It is something woven into the present moment, revealed when we live with mindfulness and compassion. The Buddha often spoke of the Eightfold Path, not as an abstract doctrine, but as a way of living day by day. Right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. These are not lofty ideas, but practices to be embodied in the smallest acts. When we practice them, happiness ceases to be a distant dream and becomes the natural fragrance of our lives. Right speech is one doorway. Every word we speak has power. Words can wound like arrows or heal like soothing balm. To speak with honesty, with kindness, with care. This is to create happiness not only for ourselves, but for those around us. Imagine a household where harsh words are replaced by gentle ones, where criticism gives way to encouragement, where silence itself is filled with presence. Such a home becomes a temple of peace. Right action is another. To live with integrity, to avoid harming, to act with compassion. These are seeds of happiness. A simple act of generosity, even as small as offering a smile, can lift the heart of another and lighten our own. To refrain from harm, to choose patience over retaliation, to protect rather than exploit. These are not burdens, but freedoms. For when our actions align with compassion, we walk unburdened by regret, and happiness follows naturally. Right livelihood also reminds us that happiness cannot grow from harm. If the way we earn our living causes suffering to others, even if wealth is gained, peace is lost. But when our livelihood supports life, when it contributes rather than destroys, it becomes a source of joy. The Dharma teaches us that the measure of success is not accumulation, but harmony. Harmony with ourselves, with others, with the earth. Even the simplest daily acts can become part of the path. Eating a meal, we can practice mindfulness. Instead of rushing or distracting ourselves, we pause to notice the food, its colors, its fragrance, the effort of countless beings that made it possible. Eating in this way, gratitude arises, and gratitude itself is happiness. Walking, we can practice mindfulness. Instead of hurrying with thoughts of the future, we feel the contact of our feet with the earth, the support of the ground beneath us. Walking in this way, présence arise, and presence itself is happiness. There is a story of a monk who was asked how he practiced mindfulness. He replied, "When I walk, I walk. When I eat, I eat. When I sleep, I sleep." The questioner said, "But everyone does that." The monk smiled and answered, "No. When you walk, your mind is already elsewhere. When you eat, your mind is filled with plans. When you sleep, your mind races with worries. I simply do what I do. This is the essence of the path to be here, fully. In each act, happiness as daily practice is not glamorous. It is not about constant excitement or dramatic achievement. It is about the quiet discipline of awareness, the gentle return to compassion, the willingness to be fully present in the ordinary. Over time, these small acts accumulate, shaping the heart, creating a life that is both simple and radiant. Reflect for a moment on your own daily rhythm. How often do you speak without awareness, act without compassion, eat without gratitude, walk without presence? Each of these is a missed doorway into happiness. But the good news is that the doorways are always open. Every breath, every step, every word is an opportunity to practice. The path is not somewhere else. It is here. Imagine tomorrow as a day of practice. You wake, and instead of rushing, you pause to breathe, to smile. At the gift of a new morning, you prepare food, and you notice its fragrance, its warmth, the hands that made it possible. You speak to another, and you choose words of kindness instead of impatience. You work, and you ensure your work does not harm but supports life. You rest, and you allow rest to be full, without distraction. In each act, you are practicing the path, and in each act, happiness arises, not as something added, but as something revealed. The Dharma reminds us that happiness is not hidden in special places. It is not waiting only in meditation halls or mountain retreats. It is here, in the marketplace, in the kitchen, in the classroom, in the office, in the silence before sleep. Wherever mindfulness and compassion are practiced, there, happiness blooms. So tonight, as you prepare to rest, set the intention for tomorrow, not to achieve something great, not to change everything at once, but simply to bring awareness into the ordinary, to speak with kindness, to act with compassion, to eat with gratitude, to walk with presence. These are the steps of the path, and when you take them, you will see that happiness has been with you all along, as close as your next breath. As we come near the end of this long reflection on happiness, let us pause and look back at what has unfolded. We began with the restlessness of the human heart, always chasing, always searching, believing happiness to be something far away. We saw how pleasure and fulfillment differ, how fleeting joys can distract us, while deeper peace is born of compassion, wisdom, and purpose. We explored how suffering is not the enemy of happiness but its teacher, how impermanence need not be feared but embraced, how emotions are not obstacles but guests to be welcomed. And again, the Dharma has whispered, happiness is not at the end of the road, but here. In each mindful step, the journey has shown us that happiness is not one single thing, but a harmony of many conditions: health of body, purpose of spirit, kindness in speech and action, stability in life, connection to something greater. These are the pillars of well-being. Yet each person must discover their own way of weaving these into a life. No formula fits all, for every being is like a unique flower blooming under the same sun. The Dharma gives us guidance, not cages, direction, not rigidity. It shows us the river of the Eightfold Path and invites us to step in, to let it carry us. to trust its flow. At the heart of it all lies mindfulness, the art of being present. Without mindfulness, even great fortune feels empty, for we are never truly there to taste it. With mindfulness, even a sip of water becomes a miracle. To breathe with awareness, to walk with awareness, to love with awareness, this is already happiness. It does not require waiting for the future, nor clinging to the past. It is here, in this moment, if only we awaken to it. And what of suffering? We have seen that it cannot be erased, for it is part of being human, but it can be transformed. The first arrow will always come, but we need not strike ourselves with the second. We can allow pain to be pain, and in that allowing, we find peace. We can transform anger into understanding, grief into compassion, fear into courage. In this transformation, suffering itself becomes a teacher, and happiness arises not in spite of it, but through it. Let us also remember the stories, the Zen master's overflowing cup reminding us to empty ourselves of clinging. The farmer's patient, maybe, teaching us to rest in uncertainty. Rumi's guest house, inviting us to welcome every emotion. Lao Tzu's water, flowing gently yet powerfully. The tea ceremony, honoring the sacred in the ordinary. These stories are not distant tales, but mirrors for our own lives. They remind us that wisdom is not complicated. It is as simple as letting go, as flowing, as welcoming, as attending to what is here. Reflect now on your own life. Where does happiness dwell for you? Perhaps in a child's laughter, perhaps in the stillness of dawn, perhaps in the quiet act of helping another. And where does suffering visit you? Perhaps in loss, in regret, in longing. Do not see these as separate worlds. They belong to the same vast sky. The clouds of sorrow pass. The sunlight of joy returns. And through it all, the sky remains. You are that sky, vast, is spacious, unbroken. Happiness is the recognition of this vastness, the resting in what cannot be shaken. The Buddha once said, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without." These words are both simple and profound. They do not deny the importance of conditions like health and relationship, but they remind us that unless the heart is at peace, no outer condition will satisfy. And when the heart is at peace, even simple conditions, a breath, a sip of tea, a kind word are enough to bring joy. So, dear one, let this be the gentle conclusion. Happiness is not something to chase. It is something to notice. To nurture, to allow. It is not the absence of storms, but the way we open our sails to move with them. It is not perfection, but presence. It is not found by holding tightly, but by letting go. Tonight, as you rest, let this truth sink into your heart. You do not need to become someone else to be happy. You do not need to wait for a different life. You do not need to reach for distant horizons. All that is required is to return to this breath, this moment, this presence. Here, in the simplicity of awareness, the path of happiness opens before you. Step onto it gently, and with each step, you will know you are already home.